Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1414 of the War News stream. And we have some very big news yet again tonight. We've seen that Russia has now threatened missile strikes against the United States over a seized Russian oil tanker that was seized near Iceland today. We've also seen that the Iranian forces are apparently preparing a coup attempt as we speak, and we're not sure when this is going to take place, but it is in the works. And also, Ukraine destroyed a crucial Moscow facility today, which produces jet engines in a major loss. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have some significant news coming, of course, from every single corner of the globe once again over the course of just the past 24 hours. United States Armed Forces, specifically that of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment of the United States Army and other special forces, have conducted a boarding and seizure of the Russian-flagged Miranira, formerly the Bella 1 crude tanker, which was under the attempt at seizure since it ran the U.S. blockade around a week and a half ago. Apparently, according to information that we had on the scene, Russian forces were present in some limited number within the area as the United States was seizing the vessel, and they did absolutely nothing to stop the United States from seizing the ship. However, the Russian Federation's officials within the State Duma are now calling for direct strikes and attacks against the United States of America and its vessels at sea, in direct response to the seizure of the vessel that has been conducted today. While all of this has been going on, we have seen that at the exact same time, the revolution in Iran is continuing, and significant firefights are still ongoing throughout most of the country in between the revolutionaries and the internal security services, but the internal security services appear to be cracking at this moment, and we have heard some police officers, including a police chief from one area today, unknown within the country, stating that they will no longer be allowing or continuing their support of the Islamic Revolutionary government, and that they will actually be conducting some significant action today and tomorrow, which we believe is the insinuation of a possible coup d'etat attempt, at least within some area of the country, or attempting to support and arm the revolution against the Iranian regime, which is a very large and shocking sort of a discovery and breaking news development, as it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran is losing its very government apparatus that allows for its existence, giving the revolution another major victory over the course of the day in terms of being able to eventually topple the Iranian regime. Meanwhile, we have also seen that just next door, well, not necessarily next door, but about the next door over from next door inside of Syria, the Syrian Civil War appears to be going back into full swing, now with only two factions generally in the mix, the Syrian interim government and the Syrian Democratic Forces. Both sides appear to be engaging in heavy fighting within the area of the city of Aleppo, as the Syrian interim government is attempting to crush and destroy a small enclave of SDF forces that exist within the northeastern quadrant of the city of Aleppo. At the same time, we've also started to hear reports that there are significant buildups of SIG and SDF forces along the entirety of the Euphrates River and Lake Assad, as it appears that they will be preparing for larger clashes and conflicts along the entirety of the border that they share within the country currently. The Saudi Arabians are still conducting airstrikes in support of the Southern Transitional Council against the Hadrami elite forces, and airstrikes have been seen near to the coastline over the course of the day. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has taken a significant hit overnight by a Ukrainian drone attack, which appears to have hit a aviation jet engine productions plant within the city, which produced turbojets not only for the aircraft of the Russian Federation's Air Force, but also turbine jet engines for Russia's helicopters. It seems that this may be a significant blow to Russia's already limited war industry capabilities, and may be a death nail for Russia in its abilities to replenish and replace lost airframes with new aircraft using those brand new engines that would generally be produced within the Russian Federation. We've also been able to hear that a Russian oligarch in charge of a significant company that produces wartime materials for Russia has died today in a helicopter crash under mysterious circumstances. This one doesn't really appear to be falling out of a window. This appears to have more so the mark of Budanov on it, because we did see that when the helicopter hit the ground for just a brief moment, it developed a second chin, and that gives us a very heavy indication that Ukrainian intelligence was involved in the operation. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting significant losses onto the Russian Federation armed forces across the entirety of the front lines today, with Russia making very little to, if any, advances over most of the active front, with strikes also being seen near to the area of the port of Feodosia, and also attempted strikes near to the area of Kursk. The Ukrainian government is continuing to request support from the greater outside world for their continued war efforts, and we have seen that the European Union is the one generally responding to the call. However, the European Union also has another situation that they're having to deal with at the moment, which deals with the ongoing situation with Greenland, as the United States of America's president has continued to demand that either the Danish sell Greenland to the United States, or the United States is going to conduct an armed military invasion of Greenland, which is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which is also a member of the NATO treaty, or generally the NATO convention, meaning that in such an invasion would generally be the invasion of a NATO state, which could invoke Article 5 in the defense of Denmark against the United States of America in that attempted invasion. We've also seen that the Danish now have given orders to shoot on sight any U.S. soldiers that appear to be conducting unauthorized military activities within the area of Greenland, due to the heavily suspected fear that any sort of unauthorized military actions by the United States at this point within Greenland, outside of Thule and other significant air bases and Space Force stations that we are operating in Greenland, may be the beginning of an attempted annexation of the island of Greenland and an armed invasion. Meanwhile, France and other European nations are continuing to discuss the ongoing development, and it appears that they are generally speaking amongst themselves to figure out how to defend Greenland from the United States if it ever came into such a situation. Nevertheless, in Greenland, or outside of Greenland and more so in the Caribbean, we've also been able to hear that the United States conducted the seizure of another vessel today. We believe it's called the MT Sophia, which was boarded in the Eastern Caribbean near to Venezuela. The United States has also made significant announcements over the course of the day, along with the United States, about upcoming developments that are going to be going on in between the current Venezuelan government and the United States of America. While we've also heard that Petro, who has openly demanded for the overthrow of the U.S. government while in New York City several months ago last year, is apparently going to be visiting the United States here very soon. And the president has stated that they had a very eventful, a very polite and cordial phone call, although we do not know what the meeting inside of Washington or is going to be about exactly once the president of Colombia arrives. Nevertheless,
yeah, that's really nice of Petro to deliver himself right into U.S. custody like that. That's a very good thing. He's making it real easy for us all.
I mean, really, absolutely impressive right there. You know, the U.S. basically said, "Would you like to turn yourself in?" He said, "Gladly." In fact, I'll fly in first class. But anyways, we have loads of news to cover, folks, over the past 24 hours, and we are going to be making sure to get into each and every single bit of it, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on into the smaller stories throughout the night. And, of course, folks, I cannot say it again as much times as we've said it this week, most every story today is once again another large series of stories. We really don't have a lot of small stories over the course of the day, so make sure to stick around for all the news that we have, because it is going to be quite an earful, to say the least, in terms of how much there is to cover, and also how significant most of the developments are. Moving us on into our largest development of the day, we are going to be going to the north of the United Kingdom. Actually, technically, this is somewhere just a little bit north of the Faroe Islands, generally closer to Iceland than it is to the UK, but for simplicity's sake, we put all of our markers in a simplified area just north of Scotland, near to the area of the Hebrides Islands, which is in the northwestern area of the Scottish lands. Moving on into this area, we were able to hear earlier in the day that the United States of America was apparently planning to board the vessel. We did get to see some pictures the other day, generally showing the U.S. Near to the Bella 1, and let me make sure that I can show you all this right here as well, because we can see a Legend-class Coast Guard cutter following closely behind the Bella 1 as it was attempting to break out into the area of the Norwegian Sea and eventually make it towards the Russian Federation. From what we have been able to hear before the seizure was conducted today, some elements of the Russian Navy, at least some elements of the surface fleet, were actually able to make it near to the vessel and were nearby when the incident happened. We do not know how many there were and what class of vessel they were. We have absolutely no information on that, but there was a general statement issued that apparently Russian vessels were somewhere within the general area and could have responded if they wanted to the seizure. We were then able to hear that the Bella 1 had officially been seized. According to the U.S. European Command, they put out the following statement. Also with this picture provided by the United States Coast Guard from the bridge of the Legend-class cutter, showing a picture of the Bella 1 off in the distance, and it's looking pretty damn rough, I'll be entirely honest with y'all. But nevertheless, the U.S. European Command has stated the following. The Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Department of Defense, has announced the seizure of the MV Bella 1 for violations of U.S. sanctions. The vessel was seized in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked by the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Monroe. This is a picture taken from the bridge of the Monroe, mind you all. We then saw a picture that actually came out from the Russian side here really quickly. Actually, this is another picture from the Monroe, which was still shadowing the Bella 1 before the seizure. But then a little bit later on, we got these really interesting little pictures that were actually taken from on board the Bella 1. And that right there is an AH-6, a Little Bird, carrying special forces, being carried once again by the 160th SOAR towards the deck of the Bella 1. And here's
Wait a second. That's a Little Bird. That's interesting. I mean, what is the range on a Little Bird? Where'd the thing come from?
We believe that it came from the United Kingdom, probably somewhere near to the Isle of Skye or somewhere within that general area, because that would seem to make the most sense. Although, I could also say that this could have been supported by another vessel within the area. Legend-class cutters, if I'm not mistaken, actually have a helipad on board. And so this Little Bird may have flown from the UK to the Legend-class cutter, landed there, then was refueled, and then took back off, and then conducted the boarding of the ship.
Yeah, that must be it, because that's a far away for a Little Bird to go. I'm not sure what the range is of that helicopter right off the top of my head, but I don't think the range is that far, because that's a little helicopter. I mean, that thing is small. It's not a big one. So, yeah, I was wondering today, I was like, how does that thing get all the way out here to go get the ship next to Iceland like that? That's kind of wild, but I guess it likely was supported by a ship. I think you're right.
It has to be, because I just looked at the range, and the range of a Little Bird, folks, is only 225 to 250 miles, depending on its weight, its loadout, and a couple of additional factors as well. So it's somewhere around 230 to 250. So even to make it from RAF Fairford, where we knew that most of the 160th SOAR was previously, it would have had to have conducted 1 and 2 refueling flights just to be able to hop out to that Legend-class cutter out there in the middle of the area near to the Faroe Islands. So not an incredibly short and easy jaunt for an AH-6 Little Bird, but a very interesting selection of aircraft to also use, mind you all, for this boarding attempt. It probably would have been more efficient, at least in terms of operational simplicity, to use some sort of a larger craft like an UH-60 Blackhawk, or maybe even something along the lines of a Chinook or an Osprey, but it appears that for some reason, for some operational elements that we don't really know about, they decided to use the AH-6 Little Bird instead to generally get the the landing parties on board. Afterwards, after these pictures were taken by the Russians on board, which I assume were looking up at the little bird like that meme of Willem Dafoe looking up into the sky with existential dread, we then were able to see that the vessel had fully come under control of the United States armed forces, and we could see a video here published by the Coast Guard also showing the seizure from another angle. We're assuming from a nearby helicopter.
Also, by the way, I do want to point something out real quick. From the appearance of it, the reports are that that tanker was empty and had no oil on board of it. It does appear, based on how high the ship is above the water, that it probably is empty. So we have not gotten any reports, by the way, about if there was something else on this vessel that Russia did not want us to see. We do not know what was on board the vessel. If the U.S. has learned what is on board it, they have not made that public. So I saw a lot of people asking that question. Sadly, we still don't have answers. I'm not sure if they're ever going to say.
And I would generally understand that this actually did not have any sort of cargo on it, at least in terms of oil. As far as anything else, we wouldn't know about that at the moment, folks, and we're still trying to get more information on that. But considering that its keel is way above the water, well, its keel is pretty high in the water, and the actual water line is well up above sea level, that would generally give us an understanding that this ship is incredibly light, which would line up with what we already knew, because the Bella 1 wasn't leaving Venezuela when it was being chased by the U.S. Coast Guard. It was actually attempting to enter Venezuela, and considering that it is apparently a Russian-owned oil tanker, and Russia primarily exports its oil, there would be no reason for Russia to load up oil onto the Bella 1 and then ship that oil to Venezuela, where Venezuela also, being a heavy oil producer, exports oil pretty much only. So it wouldn't really make any sense for the ship to come into Venezuela laden. So it appears that it was empty and it was attempting to get oil from Venezuela, and then once the blockade attempted to seize the vessel, it then began the literal run across the entirety of the Atlantic back up here to where it was seized. Also, by the way, you can see the helipad on the back of this Legend-class cutter right there, and it actually appears that one of the helipad hangar bay doors is actually open on the port side of the vessel.
And also, that's a Coast Guard vessel. I have that correct?
Yes, that is a Legend-class cutter of the U.S. Coast Guard.
I hate to say it, I hate to break it to them, but they're not near the U.S. coast. They happen to gone across the entire Atlantic. So a strange place for the U.S. Coast Guard to be all the way around to Europe, basically.
Oh, well, you wouldn't believe it. The Coast Guard's everywhere.
But this one right here was stationed around South America, though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. But, you know, there's actually a lot of Coast Guard cutters just like these, actually, in the Persian Gulf.
Interesting, interesting. This one's far away from home, though. I'm sure they loved the little excursion that they got to go on, though.
Oh, yeah. You know, in the Coast Guard song, the Semper Parata song, the beginning line is from Aztec shore to Arctic zone to Europe and Far East. Our flag is carried by our ships in times of war and peace. So, like, even their Coast Guard song, the literal opening lines, like, we're basically everywhere. It's like the Navy, but not really the Navy, basically.
Indeed.
But we can see here the continued video showing us the seizure of the Bella 1 by the U.S. Coast Guard. And of course, I do have to add in, folks, that the operation was conducted flawlessly by U.S. forces. We understand that there was no active fire on board the vessel, and the vessel was taken generally without a fight once the U.S. Coast Guard began to board, and also U.S. Special Forces as well. We have also been able to hear that apparently the United States is going to be sending the Russians up to trial, at least the ones that have been detained on board the Bella 1. And I gotta be honest with y'all, this is one that I'm actually pretty happy to hear, because apparently the U.S. will put the crew of the detained tanker on trial in the United States for sanctions violations. The White House confirmed that the tanker was illegally transporting Venezuelan oil in violation of U.S. sanctions, which I will say that is quite dubious right there, because the ship is quite high above the waterline, and if it was laden with Venezuelan oil, it would be fairly low on the waterline, and on top of that, it never made it to a Venezuelan port in the first place to load up with it. So sanctions violations, sure, and also the fact that the ship is generally stateless, considering that it changed flags in the middle of its voyage when being pursued by the United States, definitely have those two things going for it. But loaded up with Venezuelan oil, you do not see a ship riding that high in the waterline when it's completely laden with some form of oil. It never even made it to port to load up with oil, so that statement is a little bit of a stretch. But nevertheless, we did also get to hear that apparently there are Russian citizens that were on board this vessel and operating the ship. Earlier, the Russian Foreign Ministry did demand that the United States treat the Russian citizens with humane and dignified treatment on the ship, as well as respect for their rights and interests. That is one hell of an interesting statement, and speaking of that, we'll actually get into all of the Russian comments and actions that have been made to the response of the seizure of the Bella 1 over the course of the day. First off, we did get to hear that the Foreign Minister, Horseface, aka Sergei Lavrov, apparently came out of his stall today after having a sugar cube and some feed, and made the following statement. Russia demands the U.S. ensure humane and dignified treatment of Russian citizens aboard the ship and fully respect their rights and interests, including their right to return to Russia. It appears that the United States dutifully noted that demand and request and then ignored it, as those Russians will be standing trial in the United States of America for some form of sanctions evasion. I guess you could say that is rather unfortunate for the Russians, because it appears that while the U.S. is generally kind of like waffling on Ukraine and almost not really supporting them, one thing's for certain, these Russians are not going to be escaping the wrath of the U.S. legal justice system. And holy moly,
we should give them a deal. We should give the Russians a deal like they gave us. You remember how they traded us the WNBA player for the Merchant of Death that we were pretty much imprisoning inside the United States? We ought to have them free the Merchant of Democracy out of Russia in exchange for their couple of shipmen here. So we got to give them a juicy deal and get some people back.
You know, I got an idea. We ought to sit there and say, for the release of these Russian sailors, we demand the release of every single Ukrainian prisoner of war out of the prisoner of war camps. Sounds like a fair trade to me. I think that'd be a pretty decent one. I don't know. Maybe the Russians would accept it. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they find it to be embarrassing. But beyond that, I think they'll consider it, at least for a second. But while the Russian Foreign Ministry did put out that official statement today, many statements have been coming from the Russian State Duma, which is their equivalent of the Congress, that are quite fiery and incredibly angered over the course of the day, to say the least. According to one deputy minister, Russian State Duma Deputy Zurevlov, he stated the following: "We need to respond militarily, strike with torpedoes, and sink a couple of American ships, directly threatening acts of war against the United States of America and our commercial shipping in response to a ship that not only was on a sanctions registry with an official court order in the United States to seize the vessel for that matter, but was also attempting to violate U.S. sanctions by loading up with Venezuelan oil." So apparently the Russians' response is to just strike U.S. ships at random and basically conduct unrestricted submarine warfare like it's the Second World War, because we seized a ship that was violating sanctions and so on. So that is at least one of the Russian demands of a response over the day. We've also heard some additional statements as well, apparently from the Russians, as we also were able to hear that another Russian lawmaker claimed that the U.S. seizure of a Russian-flagged oil tanker is outright piracy. And I think they're mistaken. The Iranians are the ones who conduct piracy, along with the Houthis. We don't conduct piracy. We conduct lawful actions at sea. At least in this particular instance, because this was backed up by a court order for seizure of the vessel, which means that this was following a legal framework from top to bottom. It's not even questionable. The vessel was sanctioned on a U.S. Sanctions registry, which means that if the vessel is ever found and we want to go through the effort, we can go through the courts to get a warrant to actually seize the vessel and enforce the sanctions list, and then go seize it. We've followed the legal process from start to finish in the United States to seize the vessel, and the Russians are calling that outright piracy. So a little bit funny, to be entirely honest with y'all. And one thing that's even funnier, folks, one thing that's the most funniest, is that the Russian Federation actually apparently had a surface ship or two somewhere within the area. It apparently wasn't incredibly close to the Bella 1, but we had assumed that they were maybe several dozen nautical miles away when the seizure was conducted. And according to information that we have, the vessels took absolutely no action to stop the U.S. from seizing the ship, meaning that the Russians basically stood by and watched as their very own tanker was just nabbed straight out of the sea by the United States and is going to be turned around and brought back to the United States, although I don't really think a U.S. port should be disgraced by such a rust bucket, considering how bad of a condition that ship was in when it was seized. Nevertheless, a lot of people are talking at this moment about the incident that's happened just north of the UK, near to the Faroe Islands today, with the seizure of this ship, and the fact that some Russians are demanding for direct strikes on U.S. vessels, and basically acts of war against the United States of America for what has been done today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well? Do you think the Russians are actually going to let this slide, or do you think that the Russians might escalate, or maybe it's a 50-50? And what are you thinking about it?
Okay, so this is the big question of the day. Now that the U.S. has basically called Putin's bluff by boarding and taking and seizing this tanker near Iceland, after Russia dispatched multiple different naval vessels to intercept it, what do you think is going to happen now? Will Russia respond to this in any meaningful way? And 54% said no, Russia will let this one slide, while 20% said yes, Russia will escalate dramatically, and 19% said it's a strong 50-50 chance of either option. So I will say, good news is apparently the Russians were bluffing, at least initially, because even though their ships were in the area, they did not take action. So it appears to be the U.S. called their bluff successfully, but there's a big problem though. Putin operates off of image, very heavily so, and right now he has had the wind taken out of his sails, to say the least. That's an understatement. Russia's looking extremely weak right now because they literally sent their warships to protect the vessel. Not only did they not protect it, but also they just had to sit there while the ship got pillaged by the United States. So not good look for Russia right now. It looks like they were a lot of talk and no action. And I think Putin knows that. And I think that's going to mandate a response of some sort. I'm not sure how far they're going to go. We're seeing the Russians call for war on their back channels, and also members of the State Duma inside of Russia calling for strikes against U.S. vessels. It's unclear if Putin's going to follow through with something that extreme, but I am with the 20%. I think they are going to escalate in some way or another. They kind of have to save face. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would generally have to actually be with the 20%. I think that the Russians are going to try and escalate dramatically because of this, because a lot of people don't really understand, I think, when people are talking about this, because I've seen a lot of people online today say the Russians can't do anything, but I don't think a lot of people understand that doesn't mean they can't do anything at all. It's just that if they try and do something, it's probably going to end up quite poorly for them, but they can still try and do something. And considering that basically every single Russian fleet, except for the Black Sea Fleet, is still entirely intact and operational at the moment, however much that means, which isn't really a lot, considering that most of the abilities on board these vessels are probably hardly operational, if at all, since most of them were mothballed for decades and just brought into service in the last 10 years. The Russian Navy really couldn't do a lot in terms of actual military action, but one thing they could do is attempt to sail out and start trying to harass U.S. vessels within international waters anywhere around the world, and generally try and just create diplomatic incidents over the harassment that Russian ships could pose to U.S. shipping globally. They may even try and conduct further actions, like maybe even see, for example, supporting the Houthis to try and once again threaten this vital shipping route inside the Red Sea, and other actions. A lot of people always want to say, and this is true, that the Russians are weak, incompetent, and stupid, and I would definitely agree with that without a doubt. But that does not mean that we live in a vacuum to where we can make nothing but actions and the Russians cannot react at all. There is some form of reaction that they could give, and it may not even be anything directly correlated to the maritime situation. It may be something directly correlated to the situation in Europe on land. Say, for example, further border incursions into Baltic states, like the one we saw at Vasknarva just a couple of weeks ago. We could also see that they maybe start to conduct more errant drone flights into the European Union, or we may even see that the Russian Federation tries to conduct espionage within the United States of America to conduct damage to critical infrastructure and industry if it's possible. There's always a way that another country can react. A lot of people like to think that we live in fantasy land where we're basically like a kid in a toy box and we're the ones who basically dictate how the game goes. What we really are doing is that we're the strongest guy in a bar full of like 30 dudes. And while we are quite a strong guy, you know, you can still get a swing thrown at you by a smaller dude, even if it's not going to land, and even if it does land, it might just sting a little bit. Someone can still try something. And considering that Putin does exist, like Matthew's saying, and I'd entirely agree, entirely on the face of things, kind of a lot like the current president of the United States, to where they have to have a whole bunch of gusto and image surrounding them, and if anything deflates that image, there is hell to pay. We would assume that Putin will have to make some form of hell to make sure that the U.S. pays for what they've done, making Russia look like a fool just north of the Faroe Islands. So I would have
You know, the unfortunate part about this is because Russia is so weak on the military front, which they are, they're not able to take Ukrainian ground the way they were expecting to take it. They've been bogged down for years now. It's pushing them even further toward this nuclear doctrine that they have, which is basically the entire Russian national defense. Their whole defense rests on nuclear weapons, and it's pushing them back toward that yet again. So I would not be shocked to hear more nuclear threats coming out in the next couple of weeks or so, because, I mean, once you take the gusto out of the whole Russian image, you start resorting back to the basics, which is we have nukes and we'll nuke the whole world. That's what they resort back to every time. But For them to go to that, though, I mean, over a ship, probably not over a ship. They'll threaten it, but they're not going to do something that crazy over an oil tanker. I think this was a huge bluff that they tried to pull off here. For a second, it looked like they might have been serious, but I think this was a very big bluff, and it probably will turn out to be nothing, but they will respond, though, just to save face.
I would definitely agree with that. It's not going to be anything crazy, folks. The Russians aren't going to start World War III over this incident, but it's definitely going to cause rising tensions between the United States and Russia. And also, on top of that, folks, another funny thing is that the United States is still trying to negotiate with the Russian Federation about the war in Ukraine. Like, apparently that's still going on in the background. And then we did this action today, which is going to completely explode any relations that didn't even exist between Russia and the U.S. And the Russians probably aren't even going to talk to the U.S. at this point. And then for some reason, even still, we act like we still cannot support the state of Ukraine in the war against Russia, although Russia's probably not even going to be wanting to talk to us after what happened today. Now, that is a direct reaction that Russia will definitely do, folks, is that due to the seizure today, the Russians are going to call up the president and go, rinky-dink the wise, you wouldn't have stood for this, you have disrespected us, and they're probably going to cut off all diplomatic communication with us for some period of time, meaning that we will not be able to make, or the administration in their mind won't be able to make any progress, which is basically just running in the sand in place on the war in Ukraine and trying to end it. So that will definitely be a direct reaction from the Russians, and at that point, it's like, why? Like, I just got to say this, folks, why in the world would we not support Ukraine at that point? I don't even understand that, to be entirely honest, because it's like, if we are in a bad position with the Russians, and the Russians are clearly supporting even the current administration says are our enemies, like Venezuela and China, which the Russians are lock in step with. And in fact, the Russians have condemned the United States for the action that we did in Venezuela. So clearly not aligned with the United States in any way and not a friendly state. So even without the war in Ukraine in question, Russia is still a clear enemy. And it's like, if they are, why wouldn't we support Ukraine with significant amount of weapons and military support so that way they could see that they obliterate the Russians, which are our enemy, whether we like the war in Ukraine or not in the current administration.
Yeah. They're not going to have a choice, really. The U.S. officials at this point are not going to have much of a choice because, like we're saying, Russia is going to respond in some way or another. And I'm already hearing, like, some of the top advisors to Putin's inner circle, like, for example, Alexander Dugin, who is the wannabe modern-day Rasputin. He kind of has the same look going on. He's sort of a strange fella out there. But I saw him on Twitter today, once again, saying that the peace talks were a complete waste of time. And he was saying something to the effect of, well, Russia's about to have to wage a full-scale war with the West. So, I mean, already the top advisors inside of Russia are already suggesting that peace talks have to come to a close. And, the fact that Russia has to respond, I think they will. So even if the U.S. wanted to have good relations, I agree with you on this. I don't think they're going to be able to. Putin's going to put a stop to that, at least temporarily.
I would say so. Speaking of Dugin, we do have to get to that little statement from Dugin today. Dugin has stated, but we'll save the other bit of the Moscow news for later, that the so-called peace deal was impossible from the very beginning, the pure waste of time. Russia is morally prepared now to radical full-fledged war with the West. This came today right after the tanker was seized, so this isn't like, oh, it's just about Europe, it's about the United States as well. Russia doesn't look like, Russia has pulled the wool over some people's eyes in America fairly well, making them think that the Russians don't have a problem with America, they just have a problem with Europe. They hate us all. Like make no mistake, the Russians hate everyone in America and Europe equally, and they look at them as the same group. I gotta say, that Dugin guy, though, he's got to take a shower and he's got to shave eventually. I mean, he's looking quite rough. You can't do it. It runs the whole Rasputin thing. Rasputin was a nasty fella, and I think Dugin, who knows, like, maybe Dugin goes that far to LARP as Rasputin that he doesn't take showers, possibly. There's no telling, but the guy certainly looks, I'll tell you what, he needs a shower. He is looking nasty, like horrendous. But moving on out of the news of the seizure of the Vela 1, which is significant news over the day, it is time for us to move on into the Islamic Republic of Iran and the ongoing revolution that is still happening inside of their country, which is quite significant again today. And once again, like many other days, the revolution continues to grow and the violence continues to escalate. We have seen that over the course of the day, the Iranian government has been apparently getting towards the line of a possible coup, as we did see yesterday and the day before that multiple members of the police and internal security forces appear to actually be turning tail and supporting the revolutionaries instead of the central government, which pays their checks. And it appears that the central government is losing basically most of their support, even within the internal security forces. We've now seen today that not only are they losing their support, it actually appears that the internal security forces are taking direct stages statements against the government, as an Iranian police officer in this clip, with their face blurred out, stated, "I will never take part in the repression of my own people," and also stated that January 8th and 9th are going to be very significant days within the country, possibly suggesting a military coup that's about to be conducted against the Khomeini regime.
درود بر مردم شریف ایران. من هرگز دست به سرکوب و کشتار مردم خودم و هموطنان خودم نمیزنم. وعده ما 18 و 19 ساعت 8 شب.
What's he holding?
The magnet.
It's holding a magnet or something. I'm not sure really what that is.
Man, he's holding out the magnet going, "It's going to be a significant day tomorrow." Right, he's going to go up to everyone in the Iranian government. He's going to hold the magnet up to him, and the pagers are going to come flying right out of their pockets. They'll be helpless then.
Yeah, probably so.
Maybe. I don't know. Man, that guy flew off at the end. Dang, look at him. He took off. Dang, look at that.
He said, "I'm getting up out of here." He's getting busy right now. He's going to start the thing today.
Bro, he couldn't wait. He was getting to work. He was like, dang. But it does appear that, at least at the moment, the police are now stating that there is going to be some sort of major action that they will be conducting tomorrow and the next day against the Iranian government. So that seems to be suggesting to us that they are going to be supporting the revolutionaries and now supporting them in the form of an armed coup. So fairly interesting with that development, and it does appear that they have good reason to be turning against the government, because finding the revolutionaries seems to be a hopeless cause at this point. They have taken over another city center today in the town of Amdineshk, just north of the city of Desful, which we can see in this clip right here. That's the end of that clip right there, but apparently from what we've heard, they've now taken control of the city center here as well, and it appears that more of the western Iranian cities are beginning to fall to the revolution. Additionally, we also were able to see in the smaller town of Shahrakor, just to the west of Isfahan, that there was also firing in the city over the course of the day, including a law enforcement officer that apparently was firing into a crowd. Here's the clip.
Oh, dang, man. What's he got, the homemade shotgun?
It looks like he has like a pistol grip 12 gauge. Something that you'd see like out of a Punisher movie or something like that.
Yeah, it's wild right there. I'm trying to get a better, back it up a little bit to where you can see the better side angle of this thing real quick if you can, or sort of look for the frame where you can kind of see. I guess that is the best frame there, but yeah, a pump action sawed-off or something like that. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, especially for law enforcement to have, because I'll be honest with y'all, that's about the worst shotgun you could ever imagine, considering that it doesn't have an actual stock. These things are pretty difficult to aim. Luckily for the revolutionaries, this thing is difficult to aim. But this is absolutely nuts to see that supposedly the quote-unquote police are using this sort of weaponry. Oh, you had to put a thumbs up to the camera. Wait a minute. This guy's yelling death to Khomeini.
Yeah, I think he is.
But this is the hold up. Oh, this is a revolutionary. I'm sorry, everyone. I actually said that this was law enforcement earlier. This is actually a revolutionary that's armed with a shotgun. And it does have a pistol grip. There's the closer up frame of this. And, I mean, that is like the worst shotgun, folks, imaginable right there. It doesn't look like it has a stock at all, and I wish that we could tell y'all a brand on this thing, but it doesn't look like we'll be able to find that. But this is actually, folks, a correction here. I have to make a retraction on air. This actually is not a police officer within the area. This is actually a revolutionary that was firing at the police around the corner. So I have to make that correction, folks, so that way we can clarify the story here.
That guy ate that recoil like a champ, though. Like, those things kick pretty badly because they obviously don't have a stock. So, I mean, that guy, look at him. He just ate that up.
I mean, he kind of did, man. He was like very graceful with it as well. He fired, he just kind of let the recoil slowly take his hands back so that he could put the gun back behind cover. I mean, that was actually a pretty impressive handling of one of the most unhandleable shotgun designs ever made, at least in my opinion. But anyways, moving on from that, we can then move further on down and into the town of Borogen, where we also were able to hear protesters and revolutionaries chanting that this is the final battle and Pahlavi will return. quite a large crowd, as we can hear. We didn't really get to see them, but at least we did get to hear the audio to some extent. We have also been able to hear, before we move on to the rest of our news, that a lot of y'all have actually weighed in on the statement by that police officer today that tomorrow is going to be an incredibly big day after he made statements openly disavowing the government of Iran and vowing that they will no longer support a government of that type. And Matthew, what are people thinking about those sorts of statements, at least the Judgment Day statements? Are people thinking that that's about to be doomsday for the Iranian government, or are people thinking that there's still a chance that the Iranian government can hold on? And what are you thinking as well?
All right, so we did see the video there of one Iranian police officer saying that apparently him and his comrades are preparing January 8th and 9th as some type of, he didn't really call it Judgment Day, he just sort of said it was the appointment day. So not really sure what type of appointment they're showing up for, but I have a feeling the appointment might be a spicy one. But the Iranian police overall, though, are pretty much betraying Khomeini across the country. We did see yesterday there were police on a rooftop that were cheering the protesters on and not stopping them. And we've also seen other ones apparently defecting as well. So the police are not staying loyal to Khomeini, and that's a very big deal because once the police are not on your side, that means the authorities are against your regime and you're pretty much screwed. So what happens next? 72% said a coup attempt is imminent, while 12% said Khomeini will likely escalate badly before it gets to that point, and 9% said it's probably just some random dude yapping on the video. I will say, I'm with the 72%. I think a coup attempt is imminent. There's too many defections happening for a coup attempt not to be imminent. It could happen tomorrow or the 9th, or maybe even after that, but I think it is imminent at this point that once the authorities are not on your side, things are going to go sideways. They're probably going to form factions and try to overthrow Khomeini. So it's probably coming very, very soon. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I would believe that a coup attempt is going to be imminent at this point. With so many law enforcement officers giving no open resistance to the revolutionaries, and also some of them turning to join the revolution, and now with statements going along the lines of a possible coup being conducted tomorrow or the next day, I would have to say that it is definite at this point that a coup attempt is going to be imminent inside of Iran, and we are just basically waiting for that attempt to happen at this point, with or without any sort of success. It is something interesting to note, folks, that in most revolutions, or really for that matter, in most internal situations within the country when a current government is overthrown, that very rarely is done just by a citizen revolt alone. Usually it has to involve some elements of the military or some sort of a security force turning against the government as well, or at least splitting the government up enough that they are so weakened there really is no way for them to stand on their own two legs. That has been the situation in every single, and I mean every single situation in the world. Even the American Revolution, because the American Revolution historically in America is looked at as the people uprising against the government and overthrowing it, which was not the case at all, because it was actually the U.S. governments in the United States that rose up against the British Parliament in Britain. So there was a decent amount of government support even within the United States through the colonial governments within the colonies that greatly allowed for the ability for the United States of America to have some success in the Revolution. That is, for example, why before the Revolutionary War broke out, you would see that the British would close such sorts of congresses within the United States, like the Virginia House of Burgesses, which was basically the Virginia colony's version of their own state Congress, or state representation. That's why they closed it down, is because the House of Burgesses was already becoming openly anti-revolutionary and incredibly unfriendly to British policies within the colonies, and afterwards we then saw that any other existing colonial governments started to heavily lean more towards the revolutionary side than remaining loyalist to Britain, except for the southern colonies, but that gets into a whole history rabbit hole of its own. But nevertheless, I hope that addresses that the best I can, because historical precedent and examples would show that when the police and internal security services start turning against the government in large scale like this, the government generally will not survive. So with that, we are going to be moving on out of that little bit of news, and we're now going to be moving on into the area of Kashan, because we've actually been able to hear that within Kashan, another statue of Qasem Soleimani was caught on fire, burning kind of like he is in hell, I suppose. But anyways, we can see the statue on fire right there.
این صدای فریاد قهر ملته.
It seems like they don't like Soleimani that much, to be honest. And really, everybody that was around Soleimani sort of met a really bad fate, really. He kind of had a bad curse associated with that fellow.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, everyone really did have a bad end that was dealing with Soleimani. But I'd have to say, folks, the people lighting his statues on fire is very ironic, considering the kind of life that he led and how it kind of ended, which was also in a burning blaze right outside the Baghdad International Airport. But moving on from that and on out of that news within Western Iran, we're now going to be moving on over into the area of Kerman. This is kind of like Kermit the Frog, but Iranian. This is kind of like Farfor the Mouse in Palestine. But we also were able to see that they were opening fire on protesters in the city. Here's the clip. We hear the sound of some sort of gunfire. And what appears to be security forces running down the street while firing. We now see the cameraman trying to get out of the area. And that's the end of that clip. Moving on from that, we've also been able to see way outside of Kerman and up at Mashhad, there was a lot that happened up here. And we haven't actually heard a lot of Mashhad. It's the largest city within the northeastern part of the country, and it appears that now the revolution's getting really heavily flared up within Mashhad. I also want to point out to y'all that at one point, the Israeli Air Force actually conducted a strike on the Mashhad International Airport during the 12-day war last year, which conducted significant damage to an Islamic Republic of Iran aerial tanker unit that is based out of this airport. And I think if I move down here, I might actually be able to show y'all where it was. And let me see if I can find it for y'all here really quickly, because those aircraft were out on the tarmac last time we came through here and had a satellite picture to show. You can see these Iranian army helicopters. It appears that they may be Cobras, most likely, of some sort of an attack helicopter unit based here, along with others. And there was an aerial refueling unit that was out here as well during that time, but it appears that they're not here at the satellite pictures that were made very recently, but the attack helicopter wing was. Still, we did get to see that within this city, which we have covered on the news before about a year ago, it appears that they were apparently getting really unhappy, very unhappy as a matter of fact. They were catching buses on fire that were bringing in the besieged and the IRGC. You can see that in these clips. That one guy was shocked. He went, "Mwah!" And we also saw in this other. Dang, this one's loud. I'm going to turn that down. But you can see in this clip, the fire is raging at the buses. Oh, get it!
Wow, they are peeling out.
Man, my boy be whipping it.
Also, real quick, by the way, folks, not to jump us off this news for just a second, but for all the people asking, thankfully, we are not near the situation that's taking place right now in Salt Lake City. Apparently, there's been a mass shooting, apparently, just took place. It looks like outside of Salt Lake City slightly or something. So I'm not really sure what's up with that, but it looks to be a pretty large situation going down in the same city where we live. So not totally sure why or what has happened there, but I'm seeing the footage coming out. Huge police presence right now in Salt Lake City they're saying near Redwood Road, apparently. So a pretty bad thing going on here.
Huh, that's fairly interesting, actually, and we'll be keeping an eye on that, but just to let y'all know, we're currently not in the crisis zone at the moment, hopefully. So with that, we will be moving on into the rest of our news in Mashhad. Very unfortunate to hear, as we were able to see that they also tore down a large Iranian flag today. Let me go get y'all a video of that flag. I actually only have duplicates of the same clip twice, unfortunately. But they were ripping the flag to pieces. There's actually an incredibly large flag in Mashhad that flew over the city. It's the flag of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It appears that the revolutionaries brought the flag down and then ripped it to pieces right where it fell. There's the flag. And they're bringing her on down. And there's the flag, and there they are ripping it up. Seems like they're doing a good job at ripping it to shreds.
They're just chaos. Look at this.
I mean, really, it's crazy. Oh, look, there's a piece of it.
It's all shredded.
Ripped to pieces. Torn asunder. And that's the end of that clip, still showing us the anger that they have inside of Mashhad at the government. Outside of that, though, it does appear that this revolution is continuing on in full swing at the moment, and it also appears that we may be watching some form of imminent coups being conducted tomorrow and the next day by the internal security forces themselves against the Iranian government. We do not know how large that's going to be and how significant it's actually going to end up becoming, but it is still interesting to note nonetheless. We also saw that the United States of America was conducting what we can generally call routine surveillance flights, as MQ-4 Tritons are quite commonly seen within this area of the Strait of Hormuz, conducting surveillance against Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iranian Navy forces that are near the area of the Strait of Hormuz currently. This may be predicating some sort of future actions against Iran, but generally, to be entirely honest with you all, this surveillance pattern is actually incredibly common, and we have seen this one dozens of times over, even in the midst of everything that's happened since the 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer. So this may be suggesting nothing, but the United States is conducting surveillance flights at the moment. Moving on from that, though, folks, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the Middle East at large. And I've got to say that is really something right there, Matthew. Like hearing about that major news happening apparently nearby.
It looks like, for all the people asking about this, not to jump off for geopolitics news for a second, but since this is apparently in the same place that we're living currently, and apparently down the way, it looks like a shooting has occurred here in Salt Lake City at a LDS church, also for everybody else, the Mormon church, basically. 8 people were shot, 2 apparently have passed away, and it was a shooting during a funeral. I've never really heard of a shooting during a funeral before. That's really tragic, actually, there. It appears to be, it was on possibly what's considered for Salt Lake City kind of the rougher side of town. It looks like it was toward the airport a little bit, in the industrial area somewhat. And when I say rough side of town for Salt Lake, it's not that rough, but it's considered their rough side. But apparently it's on Redwood Road, somewhere near the airport.
So I could actually show y'all where that apparently happened. It apparently happened right here at this intersection, at least from what we can see. I cannot show you all the footage, folks, because usually people are fairly litigious in the United States about copyright, but it was apparently on Redwood Road at 700 North in Salt Lake City at this intersection right here. And we can actually see what appears to be the Exxon gas station, which I just found on air. And considering that this is Redwood Road at 700 North at that intersection, this seems to be about right around here, or right around here. Actually, as a matter of fact, from what we're looking at, this is actually looking south, because this appears to be the Maverick building right here in the background. And really quickly, we'll try and geolocate that really quickly for anyone who's interested about this news that's actually happening not too far from us. This is the direction that the camera is looking at right here. And I believe, yeah, we can actually see this building over here on the right side as well, with the stones in the area around the sidewalk. So while this isn't incredibly recent, and it appears that this fence has been removed from near to this building, this appears to be where the incident happened, somewhere down this street on 700 North heading east. So that seems to be where the incident's at the moment. Luckily, we're not in this area of Salt Lake City. We're actually more towards the southern side of Salt Lake City, so this wasn't close to us, but incredibly unfortunate to hear that that happened. But one thing that I'm interested in, Matthew, is where in the world was the funeral being held at, because I don't see a cemetery near to this area on the street.
There's apparently a church down that street, an LDS church or a Mormon church. The Mormons, like, they sometimes call themselves Mormons, they sometimes call themselves LDS members, depending on who you're talking to. But apparently there's a church there, and they were holding a funeral. And I see some people saying, "Well, who holds a funeral at night?" I think the funeral was started obviously when it was daylight, and then it turned night, and now we're seeing the aftermath of the shooting here at night. So that's tragic. There, I'm not really sure what the story is behind this, but for someone to open fire at a funeral, I mean, that's pretty low, to say the least, right there. So I have no idea what's up with this.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, I would have to say. But this generally, folks, is in what the folks of Salt Lake City consider to be the roughest part of town. It's actually this area in between Interstate 15 and Interstate 215 that's considered to be fairly rough by most people in Salt Lake City. We haven't been there a lot myself, but one time I took the tracks through it, and I will have to say it is a fairly rough area compared to the rest of Salt Lake City. But that is still incredibly unfortunate to hear that happened just tonight and at this moment. And it appears appears to be an ongoing developing situation at the moment, as a massive Salt Lake City police have descended on the area and appear to be cordoning it off and possibly trying to deal with the shooter, or have dealt with the shooter, or the shooter has fled, and they're now trying to secure the crime scene that exists in that area.
I think they're on the loose, but I haven't been able to corroborate that for a fact, but I think the shooter might be on the loose.
That's a little bit concerning to hear, but the enforcers folks are always, we're always secure, doors locked, all that stuff, and so it should be fine. But anyways, with that, hope that does address that the best that we possibly can. But that's very unfortunate to hear that's happening in the city that we're in right now. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on out of that little brief break from the international news and into our local news for a moment, and we're now going to be moving on down into the area of the Republic of Yemen. As we have seen that U.S., Saudi-backed forces of the Southern Transitional Council are still conducting their airstrikes against the Hadrami elite forces. It appears that at the moment, it seems that they are still conducting significant airstrikes. Crazy enough, folks, you wouldn't believe this. This is actually near to the coastline in Yemen, and looks totally different than the rest of the country, which is quite arid and desert-like. But these airstrikes are still significant, and it appears that the Saudis are continuing their actions to completely destroy the Hadrami elite forces and to ensure that basically the entire opposition against the Houthis is operated and controlled by the Southern Transitional Council.
Also, by the way, I'll be right back in just a second. I'm going to go prepare for bunker time, if you know what I mean. I'll be right back. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So with that, folks, we're going to be moving on from that news. Matthew's having to prepare for bunker time, folks. I'm always ready for bunker time, just to be straight up. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on up into Syria and covering the ongoing civil war that now appears to be developing within Syria. As we have been able to hear, as far as the developments within this area of the city, that it appears that the SDF has now been declared a military target by the Syrian interim government, as they have declared all YPG and SDF positions in the Aleppo area military targets and have urged civilians to evacuate within 3 hours. We've also been able to see additional information as well, showing us further armored movements within the city, including this video that was published today, showing the HTS's armored forces and mechanized units moving into the city in large numbers, continuing on their force buildups within the area to attempt to overwhelm and crush the SDF elements that are within northeastern Aleppo. And we can see here the T-72A moving in. The Syrian army, even for the Syrian interim government, is quite woefully equipped, at least for modern warfare in any other area of the world. But for Syria, this is actually considered to be heavy firepower. This is a T-72A, which is the earliest and most basic variant of the T-72 that is still in operation in existence on the planet. It has literally its base armor, which is some form of composite armor in the upper plate of the main battle tank, along with a form of quartz composite armor that makes up the turret cheeks, and that's basically all the armor that this thing has. We also see that it has a COUP cage as well, and some sort of an anti-drone chain in front of the turret as well. But what's a little bit interesting about that is that this provides basically no coverage to the side skirts of the tank or the upper hull, which could also be penetrated by an FPV drone if that was a concern, and the ammo carousel would still detonate. So this provides very minimal protection against an FPV drone, but it appears that they equipped it nonetheless.
Honestly, though, that poor thing right here is it's smoking. It's throwing out the fumes. This thing's tired.
Man, bruh, all the tanks in Syria, they go, I'm tired, boss. It's like, man, they are. Like,
also, by the way, just so people know, when people are saying, what the hell does bunker time mean? In other words, I went to go grab the strap, some higher firepower. In other words, just in case the lunatic is making their way down toward my direction, I don't want to be caught lacking. So I was just making sure that we got all of our cards and ducks in a row. Because like Zelensky said, I'm not here to play cards. I'm not here to play cards, I tell you.
But I tell y'all, folks, as far as my bunker time, it's always bunker time here at Enforcer HQ. Matthew can tell y'all that. I have basically an arm in every room, so if anything happens, it's going to be okay by me. But anyways, we can see another T-72A rolling on in as well. Horrible camo jobs, by the way. I mean, that is the cheapest looking camo application I've ever seen. It looks like they got a couple of bottles of spray paint and just tried their best on these tanks.
These are rough.
And now we can see them being followed up by the even rougher BMP-1s with no ATGMs equipped. Not a Cornet, not a 9M113. Oh, actually, it's not a 9M113. I forgot what the other one's called. It's like a a Fat Luke or something like that. I believe something along those lines. But it's a really goofy looking rocket. I mean, it's like a cartoonish looking rocket. And also we can see the soldiers of the SDF here. And I gotta be honest with y'all, actually this is the soldiers of the SIG, correction, the Syrian interim government. Fairly motley crew.
I would say these are very motley crew, to say the least. That's an understatement.
You know, not really
These guys are looking like it's their first day on the job.
Not really a lot to say about them, to be entirely honest. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Here comes the next BMP. Another BMP one. It's rolling on by, and here comes another. Oh, it is the Malik. You're right, like a worm. It is the Malyuk. They're more focused on filming than fighting, apparently, at the moment, so the SDF might have a chance. Nevertheless, heavy fighting is ongoing at the moment. We've also been able to hear rumors, but we haven't been able to get video confirmation of this, that heavy mobilizations are happening along the entirety of the Euphrates River at the moment, and it does appear that this is now turning into a second civil war in Syria. Battles are still raging right now inside of Aleppo, and we really do not know how they're going at the moment, because we are getting very little situational reports out of the city from either side, but heavy fighting is still continuing within the northeastern quarter of the region, and it does appear that it is going to continue to persist for some time. And so, before we move on out of Syria, and this was a poll that came a little bit late, it just started, but we're still going to cover it right now so that we can make sure to free up the airspace for the next polls that we have to run, because there's also other huge news, a lot of it, that we still have to cover tonight. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this current fighting that's going on in Aleppo, and the fact that we're also hearing that there is now large columns of SDF and SIG forces that are moving near to the Euphrates River? Are people thinking that this is about to evolve into a second civil war that's going to be less factionalized than the first one, or are people thinking that this situation is going to pass and there will be a decent amount of stability, but at least in Aleppo it will be a localized conflict? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so as we can see in the videos, they are bringing out the nice plethora, the fine china, the junkyard tank convoy is coming out to play, and the SDF is getting ready to meet the Jelani regime head on inside of Syria, which is obviously a pretty interesting lineup here. So how bad is this going to get? 67% said civil war is coming, while 13% said large battles will take place but no civil war, and 11% said it'll probably remain restricted to small isolated battles. And like we said before, we've been saying this a long time, Syria is on the verge of just completely collapsing again. The Jelani regime is not held up well whatsoever. And now the SDF is rolling out, like I said, the massive convoy of junkyard tanks to take them head on. So Jelani's forces don't have anything much better, to be honest. So these junkyard tanks aren't putting them at a huge disadvantage. It's pretty much on par. So I'm with the 66%. I think civil war is coming. In fact, it could already be basically a civil war right this second. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 67%. I think the Civil War is generally already here. It's just that it's been a fairly idle one at that for now. We've already seen that the SIG and the SDF have gotten into multiple engagements along the Euphrates River in the past, and they clearly are taking a hostile position against each other. Also, on top of that, we also have to consider that right now the Syrian interim government is highly unstable, and currently there are multiple different ethnic factions that are attempting to rise up and gain their own independence from the SIG because it's such a repressive government. So with that in mind, it's either going to become a heavily factionalized civil war, much like the first one, or it's going to be primarily fought between the forces of the Syrian Democratic Forces of the Northeast and the Syrian interim government, which is generally being recognized as the de facto government within the country at the moment by most people around the world. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on out of Syria. And also, folks, sorry if I sound a little bit like I'm gasping for air. I actually just ran around my place really quickly just to make sure that all my doors were locked because I didn't want to get, jumped in the middle of doing the news. So I wanted to make sure.
What'd you do that?
I literally did that while you were covering the poll. That's how quick I did that. I was
dang, man. you gotta be bad out of breath.
Yeah, I am. I actually am. But I had to make sure, folks, because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, yeah, I got the strap, but I was also thinking, I was like, I don't really know if all the doors are locked 100% for sure, because I know that they're generally locked, but I wanted to double check now that something's going on, because I don't want to sit here and have the strap, and then have some guy pop up in my place, like the nun from the horror movie, right behind me, and I don't even realize it because none of the doors are locked. So I had to go and make sure that they were locked. But before we move on from that, Because of course, folks, you got to remember, as you have to have the defender's advantage. All of the doors have to be locked, so that way you can at least hear them trying to bust in the place. So that way you can then start busting on them if you need to. But beyond that, before we move on out of the Middle East, we do have to make sure to say a huge thanks to everyone who has been watching so far. We still have 16.5 thousand people here, and we've had about 18.5 thousand people here at the peak tonight. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for enjoying this stream so far, and I hope that y'all been finding this to be of top-notch quality. If y'all have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have y'all here. And before we get on into the next bit of news, we're actually going to take a couple of questions from the chat. Only 3, but make sure to stick around, folks, because we're going to be getting into the rest of this news, and it is absolutely major as well. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Also, by the way, Oscar Meyer Russian said, but Enforcer, you said you're always ready for it, LOL. Honestly, he wasn't actually always ready for it. That's why he was running around checking the doors and stuff. He was trying to make me look like I was lacking.
Man,
I always have my firepower.
Hold up now. Hold up now. I am ready. As far as like having a piece in here, I legit, folks, have an AK-74 in the studio all the time, just because. But at the same time, though, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, well, I have this, but I'm like, the door to my the room that I'm in is not locked, and I'm not really sure if the actual main doors to the building are locked. So I was like, I need to go check those just to make sure, because technically, as far as having like the blicky, like, you know, I did have that, but I was like, I don't really know if all the doors are locked, and it's not really going to do me any well if someone like sneaks in, you know, and then I have that because they could, you know, get the jump on me anyways.
Man, I tell you, I always have something nearby. Like, I always have a little something. I don't want to get into exactly what I have nearby, but I always have a little something. But I was like, well, I'm like, apparently this person was ringing off some shots, because it sounds like they were doing a pretty good bit of shooting, it sounds like. So I just want to make sure I have a little extra, just in case somebody's coming along with a lot of ammo or something. So that's what I was doing. I was just making sure I had my storehouse in order.
I just got to make sure. I just got to make sure that everything's locked. That's really my priority, folks. Because beyond the whole fact of making sure that we're well defended, at least on my end, there's absolutely no question about that. But the question is, are the doors locked? Because I won't get into too much. But at one time, I did forget to lock one door. It wasn't one that led to like the outside though. But I was sitting there thinking, I was like, oh damn. I was like, I need to make sure those doors are locked, just in case. So, with that in mind, I hope that does address that well, folks. And with that, Matthew, what do we got for the questions?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, this one goes to none other than BC Skyman. And thank you very much, BC, for that $150 combined support. And we appreciate it very much. That is the largest super chat of the night. And he left some super stickers of the YouTube creature doing everything possible, including punching the air, as well as riding a firework, and also apparently also punching the air a second time, because apparently it didn't have enough of a beating up. So it got some extra beating up. But thank you very much, BC, once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you for the support, BC Scamming, and helping this channel to keep on running. We are greatly appreciative of the fruits punching the air. We love to see it and we love to hear it, and I gotta thank you incredibly for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And of course, I have to say that it's amazing to know that you're here with us tonight and enjoying the show, as you always have, for about every single day of every single year that we've been on air. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And before we move on to the next one, I saw someone say in the chat, someone said, I don't believe you have an AK-74. We have an actual video of it on the YouTube channel. Like, you can just pull it up, like the Enforcer AK-74, and we actually have a video of the very AK I'm talking about. And then on top of that, there also was someone saying, y'all are very paranoid. We have a very good reason to be paranoid. We've had people show up at prior HQs and pose themselves as pizza delivery men, and when we call the pizza store that they claim that they're from, they tell us that there's no pizza delivery men that are going out to that address, and that's not one of their guys. So there's all the, and we've also had a whole bunch of other stuff happen as well. There's really good reason for us to be paranoid, because back at the very beginning, that wasn't even a concern of ours at all. Over the years, it's become a concern because there are a lot of absolutely insano people out there that are very crazy and violent, and we have had near run-ins with a good plenty of them. Enough of them that this is now, like, security is a significant concern on our end. But then we also don't
We
have
get death threats. We get death threats on a regular basis. Most people don't know that because we don't go around just yapping about that behind the scenes stuff. But I mean, we get death threats, like legit, like emails of people threatening to come do something terrible quite a bit. So we take our security extremely seriously. Also, like obviously, we're pissing off some pretty high profile Russians, and they have connections in the United States, I would assume. So we don't take any chances with anything like that because you never can tell when you piss off the wrong person if they're going to come try to do something. And many people are like, oh, that's silly. Well, I mean, there's always a first for everything. We don't want to be the first to be like, oh, look, 2 guys from Alabama moved to Utah and then got clapped. It's like, I don't want to be that guy on the news. So that's why we take it serious.
I don't want to be that guy, folks, that is walking down a neighborhood street and then you hear that saxophone wailing off in the distance. You know the blood's about to get slimed. I don't want to be that guy because I would rather be the guy that people say, wow, he's really paranoid about security because they don't know what kind of threats we deal with behind the scenes that we never really bring up a lot. I would rather have that going on, and then if someone tries and mess with us, we're ready to go at that point, instead of, being completely unarmed and acting oblivious to the threats we get every day, and then getting turned into chopped cheese, and then everyone goes, oh, why didn't they, take care of their security? It's like, well, hell, we are. It's like, that's what we have to do. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can, at least at the moment, because security is a significant concern on our end because of how many threats we've gotten in the past, and they number probably well be into the thousands. Oh, well, not the thousands, but over 1,000 at this point, I'd assume, over the years. There was a huge amount of them that used to come in. Nowadays, it's still a moderate flow, but at one point, it was tectonic, the amount of threats that we would get. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Hokey Redneck, another channel legend, just like BC Skyman, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that $50 support, and we appreciate that very, very much. He said, do U.S. Coast Guard cutters have the ability to refuel and resupply at sea?
Yes, every single ship in the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard has underway replenishment capabilities. So U.S. Coast Guard cutters can actually replenish, although from what I understand, that's a little bit more rare than it would be for the Navy. In the Navy, it's actually incredibly common for our ships at sea, like Early Burks and whatnot, to conduct underway replenishment with fleet oilers and generally colliers in general that would resupply them with food stocks, fuel, and whatnot, and even munitions to some degree. But that's generally what we would know at the moment with the U.S. Coast Guard cutters as well, is that they conduct underway replenishment. Let me go pull that up. Coast Guard underway replenishment. Underway replenishment. And let me go see if I can get you all a picture of that. Yeah, and here you go, actually. Here is one of those very Coast Guard cutters actually getting replenishment from a fleet auxiliary right here. And here's another picture of that. And here's another picture of that. And here's another one. And here's another one. And here's another one here. And another one. And another one. It's a very common thing. But also, that's a very undersung but wildly important part of our Navy is our logistical capabilities, which are bar none the best in the world at the moment in terms of global power projection at sea. So I hope that does answer your question incredibly well, because the answer to that is yes. Legend class cutters can underway replenish, and they do it incredibly often. But with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Magnus the Great, who puts in a $50 support as well. And thank you very much, Magnus, for supporting the channel. And he said, thank you for the amazing coverage. And I have a serious question. Do you think that Ali Khamenei will order a nuclear attack in Tehran on the revolutionaries after leaving the capital with his still loyal officials, that is? And I wouldn't put it past him not to do it.
I wouldn't put it past him. But they do not have a nuke, and we know that for certain, because for a country to officially be nuclear armed, and for them to also be able to use a nuclear weapon, they have to conduct a nuclear weapons test. And from what we know, the Iranians have never conducted a nuclear weapons test, and if they have, it has not been detected on seismographs, and it also has not been officially announced. So, at the moment, we would not know that they have a nuclear weapon. So, generally, my answer would be, I wouldn't doubt that they would do that if they had a nuclear weapon, but from what we know, they do not have a nuclear weapon, because if they had one, they would be threatening to use that against the United States right now, and also against Israel, and they're not doing that. And on top of that, additionally, that would provide them a significant shield from really any actions that would be conducted directly against them in an armed form by anyone, because they could threaten to nuke someone within the surrounding area, and that would generally get everyone to back off, because a country could be completely obliterated or destroyed. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know at the moment. I would assume that they probably might do something like that, but at the same time, they don't have a nuke to be able to try that with, at least for now. So a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I see some people in the chat saying, they probably don't care, they'd fire it. But the thing is, though, folks, is that they don't know if it works until they actually test it. Everyone's got to test it. Every single country that is nuclear armed right now has tested their nuclear weapons. The U.S. tested our first nuclear weapon at Los Alamos, and has tested every other variant of warhead that we've ever made since then in live testing, usually within the western part of the United States. The United Kingdom actually tested its first nuclear weapons inside of Australia. The South Africans actually tested their first nuclear weapon at sea. The Israelis are believed to have also tested their first nuclear weapon in an unidentified nuclear explosion that happened in the Southern Pacific, that nobody really knows who did that nuclear test, which heavily leans us to believe that it was the Israelis, because the Israelis still officially deny the ownership of nuclear weapons to this day. The French tested their nuclear weapons, if I'm understanding correctly, in the middle of the Sahara in Africa. The Soviet Union has tested their nuclear weapons, generally at nuclear testing ranges within the Russian Federation, both in the Soviet times and also possibly here in the near future in the modern day. China tested their nuclear weapons inside of mainland China, and India and Pakistan also did the same. So any country that is nuclear, also North Korea tested their own nuclear weapons at I believe it is the Pyeongsan mountain range, which they always conduct underground nuclear detonations. They've never conducted an above ground one. So every single country on the planet that is nuclear armed, even the ones that say that they're not nuclear armed like Israel, still have conducted a nuclear test somewhere. And the Iranians could not go without doing one, because the reason why, folks, that they do that is because nuclear research and weapons development costs a load of money, and they have to make sure that their final product works. And on top of that, it's far better in the reality of it to show the world that it works instead of trying to use it on someone without them even knowing that you have one. Because say Iran fires a nuclear weapon at Israel, everyone in Iran's going to die. Like, there's no question about that. And if they try and fire one at the United States, once again, everyone in Iran is going to die. And that nuclear weapon might not even work. But the fact that they're firing a nuclear weapon at us, and we generally identify it as one, we don't know while it's flying towards us or Israel whether that thing's going to work or not, so we are going to respond as if that thing is fully operational, and they're going to completely lose their entire country, and every single leader in Iran is going to lose their life as a result of that. And the irony of it is that it might not even work. So it's far better for a country to test it, specifically in an overt way, like most every country but Israel has done, where they actually conduct a nuclear weapons test and then publish that it was successful to the entirety of the world, because it's basically saying, hey, don't touch me, I will be able to nuke everyone, and this is going to end up poorly for everyone. And then that gets people to back off without you ending up getting nuked and obliterated. So I hope that does address that the best I can, because no country on the planet has ever done that, and there's never a reason to believe that one would. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, and we are going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the rest of the news, because we have had more news coming out of the Americas, and specifically South America. What do we have today, folks? What do we have today? We have been able to see.
What do we have here?
We've been able to hear that in Caracas, apparently the sanctions on the oil is going to be eased. They're going to be able to sell it on the global market. It's crazy. The Maduro government.
So they're leaving the Vice President Delcy in charge. Is that the case then?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. I thought they were appointing Rubio and Hegseth and the bunch to lead Venezuela. I guess they're reversing course.
Well, Matthew, they're playing chess. I mean, God forbid we ever try and say that it looks like this is being done day to day and there's no overarching plan. They're playing chess, and we're just too stupid to realize why the plan is changing every single day, because it's clearly chess moves that are being made right now. And it's obvious that a Chinese, Iranian, Russian-aligned leader of Venezuela which is Vice President Delsey, clearly would never betray the United States of America or try and dupe us or double cross us, and that is an honest character to work with properly. The literal second in command of the extremely radical socialist government within Venezuela that has conducted significant reprisals even after the U.S. attack on random innocent civilians inside the country that were believed to be working with the United States. Clearly a government that is to be trusted by the United States. We have also been able to hear that apparently the president has had some sort of a phone call with Colombia, and we were able to hear that apparently it was a great honor to speak with the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who called in to explain the situation of drugs and other disagreements that we have had. I appreciated his call and tone, and look forward to meeting him in the near future. Arrangements are being made between the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and Foreign Minister of Colombia. The meeting will take place in the White House in Washington, D.C. So it appears that there's going to be an upcoming talk with Colombia. How interesting, folks. How interesting. Meanwhile, while the U.S. was seizing the Bella 1 up there near the Faroe Islands, down here in the Eastern Caribbean, they also seized the MT Sophia. I'm not going to show you all this clip. I'm actually going to show you all the other one, which is a little bit longer and a little bit more detailed on what happened. We can see the Black Hawk coming on in to the MT Sophia. It appears that the MT Sophia at this point had come to a complete stop to be boarded. We can see the Black Hawk hovering over the deck, and soon they're about to throw down the rappelling ropes, and the Special Forces teams, at least the second wave, the first wave had already gotten on board before this clip was made, is about to board the ship.
Also, by the way, which flag of convenience was this ship flying? Do you know?
I actually don't know at the moment.
Let's see. So if I have the right ship here, let's see. I don't think that's the right one, actually. I take that back. That looks like that one's located in a different spot. But let's see. It's called the Sophia, you say?
Yes, the MT Sophia.
Let's see here. Let me see if I can try to get some info on the ship.
We see the soldiers rappelling out of the helicopter and onto the deck, and then securing their positions ahead of the bridge, behind some, what appears to be some rope stays on the main deck.
So the only one that I'm seeing online that's called the MT Sophia appears to be flagged out of Greece, and its last reported location 25 hours ago was apparently in Asia. So it wasn't even here, or it wasn't even in Venezuela.
Huh. Maybe that's a different MT Sophia, possibly.
Possibly so, but I don't see a different one being listed anywhere.
Interesting. I got to say that engine exhaust is apparently quite hot.
Apparently so. Let's see here. I think I might... And this one's also being reported around Asia, too. This one's not being reported near Venezuela. Huh, interesting. I'll have to do some more research on that.
And we will, because I really couldn't get a lot of information on this thing either. I was just like, oh, well, we'll just take it at face value. They did show the unclassed footage of them taking a ship named the MT Sophia, so we would assume that it's this one down here in the Caribbean.
Oh, look at that. All the crew huddled in one spot like that. Is that the
that's
crew
the
or
Spec Ops
is that the boarding? Oh, it's a Spec Ops team. There's a lot of people on that thing.
Man, they're just up there, okay, you got the battering ram, I've got the flashbang. Like, it's like, all right, let's go over the list, let's make sure we got everything. They're generally waiting for that second team to get up there with them, so that way they've got overwhelming numbers to be able to detain the crew with. That's what they're waiting for at the moment.
Also, apparently, the reason why we're not able to find the ship is apparently it allegedly has changed its name according to the chat. So that might be why we're having a hard time finding it.
And that may be the case. With that, that's the end of that clip, though, showing the seizure of that vessel. And now it's time for us folks to move on up into Washington, D.C. and go over all the fun developments that we have from here today. I'm gonna make my comments, folks, just policy based. Because in the video earlier today, some of y'all may have heard me give a very short opinion of my comment on how the elocution of certain statements are coming out these days. We're going to keep this entirely policy-based here on the stream. So here was the statement by the President of the United States today. I'm just going to hit all of these and, use them as you will, but all of them apply to other foreign policy developments that we're seeing around the world right now. But I'm just going to read them off ad hoc because coming back to Washington, D.C. and having to do each of these one at a time on each situation is going to be somewhat laborious for for our coverage. But here was the first statement by the president today for the larger part. So let me make sure to get that closed down, and let me read this to y'all. Remember, for all those big NATO fans, they were at 2% GDP, and most weren't paying their bills. Until I came along, the USA was, foolishly, paying for them. I, respectfully, got them to 5% GDP, and they pay immediately. There's so many commas in these sentences, folks. You have to read this thing like William Shatner, I'm not gonna lie. Like, everyone said that it couldn't be done, but it could, because, beyond all else, they are all my friends. Without my involvement, Russia would have all of Ukraine right now. Remember, also, I single-handedly ended 8 wars, and Norway, a NATO member, foolishly chose not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is what I saved millions of lives. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States, and I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really need them. Everyone is lucky that I rebuilt our military in my first term, and continue to do so. We will also be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the rebuilt USA by me. Make America, great again, yada yada, sign president. So,
I'm feeling really lucky. Are you feeling lucky? I'm feeling lucky.
For the draft?
I mean, he's saying that we should be lucky. I'm feeling real lucky right now. I tell you what. Also, by the way, that first part right there, the part about for all those big NATO fans, they were at 2% GDP. Most weren't paying the bills. There's no such thing as a bill. By the way, it's the collective defense. So countries are supposed to spend 2% GDP on their national defense, so that way they can contribute to the collective defense. There's a common NATO fund as well, but that's not what he's referring to here. From what I can tell, he's referring to the collective defense spending, which it's not paying a bill. That's not what that is at all. So now, I think at this point he knows that. At this point, I think he's just saying it to be facetious. I think I'm not really sure, but he knows that.
I'll be honest, I think that this is being said at this point, Matthew, to mislead the public into thinking that the situation is something different when it's not. Because at this point, you can't make a statement like this many times, folks, that completely misrepresents the facts of how NATO operations and spending works without knowing that that's incorrect. I mean, he's been saying this for 2 years now, and there's no such thing as paying the NATO bills. You don't pay a NATO bill like an electrical bill. That's like saying, okay, everyone, we're in the rich dudes group, so you have to pay a minimum of $3,000 a month in rent for your own place, at a minimum. And then everyone has to be somewhere around there. Some of them are at about like $2,700, some of them are at, $5,000 a month, but somewhere around that range, and that's generally considered okay. That's how NATO funding works. There's no such thing as, okay, everyone, we're going to live in our own apartments. Let's all put our money in a giant pot, and then we'll go redistribute it like some sort of a socialist system. That's not how that works. Also, on top of that, the president didn't get everyone up to 5% GDP because the U.S. isn't up to 5% GDP. The U.S. is at 3.5% right now and is not at 5%. And there's a whole bunch of European countries that are working towards getting to 5%, but that's not immediately right now. That's within like the next 5 years. Also, on top of that, it's very hard to say that they're all his friends, considering that right now they're giving orders to shoot U.S. soldiers on site in Greenland because they trust him so little. So that also doesn't really seem to be the case. Also, without my involvement, Russia would have all of Ukraine right now. It's not necessarily true because the war in Ukraine had been going on for 3 straight years before the current president became the president. And currently, the president of the United States has cut funding from approximately ballparking for military support from around $30 billion a year down to $400 million a year, which is hardly even a measurable fraction of what they had been getting every single year before. So that's clearly not the case either. Also, on top of that, apparently he's ended 8 wars, although the Thailand-Cambodia war is counted in that. That war hasn't ended at all, even with the United States not being involved, because the third one just started. And for some reason, the Nobel Peace Prize actually is a big issue, although the president says that it isn't. It's like, if it's not a big issue, why is it such a big issue that he's bringing this up 4 months after the Nobel Peace Prize was given to Marina Cachado? It's like, if it wasn't that big of a deal, you would have completely forgotten about it and moved on. And also, he says that they foolishly chose not to give him the prize, which clearly shows a great deal of animosity against the
Entitlement.
government of Norway, and also the fact that this guy acts like he's owed the prize, which I got to be entirely honest with y'all, the reason why the Nobel Peace Prize will never give this guy a prize is because he acts like he's owed the prize, just to be entirely honest with y'all. I mean, like if someone acts like they're owed something, I can promise you they're never going to get it, because if someone came up to me and asked me for cash, like, can I have $100 in cash, you owe it to me, I'm going to go, hell no, I don't owe it to you. Like, even if I did, it's like at that point you're trying to compel me to give it to you, I'm not going to give it to you, just on the principle of it. That's how that's going to work.
Yeah. Also, I heard that Venezuelan opposition leader apparently, or at least I had heard that she had gone on television and said that she was willing to share the Nobel Peace Prize with the president, because she thinks that might be the reason why she got sidelined by the United States, because apparently the Nobel was awarded to her and not to the president. Not sure how much that plays into it. I will say it's not helping the president's case here by writing something like this, talking about they foolishly chose to not give it to me. It's just so petty. It's like, can we let that junk go right there? It's like, who cares about the Nobel Peace Prize? There's a lot more pressing issues. Like, for example, World War III is knocking on our doorstep. Who cares about a prize? We need to make sure that we're not going to go to war and, get blasted by foreign countries.
And also, folks, what's absolutely hilarious about this is that this proves exactly what we were saying, because we were saying multiple times throughout the year, all of these cheap ceasefires are absolutely ridiculous, and they have no basis for us to even be involved in negotiating them. The only reason we're involved in this is so that way this guy can try and get himself a Nobel Peace Prize, even if the U.S. might be sabotaging our foreign relations unnecessarily to achieve that aim. That statement right there basically confirms it, because the guy is so bitter about not getting that stupid piece of metal, he's still talking about it 4 months later. So he then says that doesn't matter. That's what someone says when they care about something and it matters to them, but they don't want to say it. But then also, he said, what does matter is that I've saved millions of lives. That is just entirely speculative. There's no way that we know that he saved millions of lives, because under the last presidency, there were not millions of people dying all the time from wars, because no wars had broken out. No wars have broken out yet in this administration. That's fairly status quo at the moment. Nothing's really changed. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States. I'd highly doubt that, because as far as the European Union as a combined military alliance, if we're just counting Europe, they are actually the largest military in the world in terms of serving personnel, with around 2 million active service members in the combined armies of the European nations. That's actually quite larger than the United States by that regard. And on top of that, if they're going up against Russia or China, they have about 5 times the air power versus the Russians or the Chinese in Europe alone. They don't get close to the United States. The U.S. has about 2.5 times the amount of air power that even the Europeans have. But Europe as a combined bulk is larger than Russia and China combined in terms of air power and service members that are actively serving in European armed forces. So clearly not really the case there. And also, let's see. And I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. That is just entirely historically untrue, because the only time that Article 5 has ever been invoked in the entirety of the history of the NATO alliance was by the United States of America in 2001. The Europeans have never invoked an Article 5 invocation at any point in history in the NATO alliance. So that argument really doesn't even stand. As a matter of fact, at least historically, it's the U.S. that needs the Europeans, because we are the only ones who've ever activated Article 5 and had to take everyone from Europe and bring them with us to the war on terror. Everyone is lucky that I rebuilt our military in my first term is also largely untrue, because the U.S. military has been growing year over year in terms of funding and military capabilities for about the last 25 years since the beginning of this century, and there has been absolutely no backtracking on that whatsoever. So I don't really know where in the world we're getting the idea the military was rebuilt, and on top of that only within a year, considering that the active amount of service members is still as large as it was last year and the prior years before that. Also, doubly, I do have to mention that the United States of America, through the attempted budget cutting through the Doge, the Doge system earlier on in the year, in 2025, had actually cut out a decent amount of contractors that assisted the U.S. military in a great deal of important tasks and abilities, especially within some branches like the United States Air Force and the U.S. Space Force, which may heavily hinder our abilities in terms of other forms of cyber warfare defense, or even logistical support outside of the military. So I don't really know if that might be entirely true, because in terms of actual fighting abilities, nothing has really been added in a great large number over just the past few years, but it's been basically status quo. Everyone's, let's see, and there will also will be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. Historically, that's also once again not true. The only time that anyone ever needed NATO, it was us, and they were there for us. And so, that's generally the statement. So a little bit of a bizarre one, and I gotta say, just it's basically untrue. Every single line of this is basically untrue in every single way. I mean, just by hardcore facts, it just doesn't even make any sense. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on. And on into another question, one that we've actually posed to all of y'all in the chat. U.S. officials say that Cuba and Colombia are next to be targeted, and democracy is coming back. I actually didn't include that one in our Washington bulletins today. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so it looks like people are pretty much all over the place with this poll right here. We have heard, I believe it was a senator today. He said that Cuba, Colombia, and there was one other country I can't recall right off the top of my head, but they're all South American, are next to be targeted by the United States, and democracy is coming back to the West, or to our hemisphere. So what are your thoughts? 36% said that's a great idea, while 33% said that's a terrible idea, and 20% said I think that's a huge bluff. And for me, I would say unless there's a direct reason for the United States to be doing things like this, I mean, it's a huge step. I mean, this can't be, understated. It's a huge step to do military interventions in countries. It shouldn't be taken lightly. So unless it's absolutely necessary, it shouldn't be something that we're just gung-ho to go and conduct. Because, if countries want to be in dictatorships, and that's the way they are, I mean, they're their own country. They can be a dictatorship. It's up to the people of that country to fix their situation. It's not for the United States to go fix it for them. So yes, there are drug trades that go on in Colombia. Yes, there's drug trades in Venezuela, but the United States is not going to wipe that out 100%. It's impossible to wipe that out 100%. You can try to curb it, but we can't go and invade every country in South America and do a conquest of the entire continent to try to deal with that. That's simply not feasible. And honestly, it's not up to us to install democracy in South America. I mean, it's up to the people, like I said before. So, me personally, I would say it's a good idea only if it's necessary for the United States' interest, and only in that case. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's probably a huge bluff. But then again, we actually took Maduro out of Venezuela, so it might not be. But I'd have to say it's not really a good idea, because getting involved in situations like that, just the fact that we're starting that many different conflicts, really for no aim. And to be entirely honest with y'all, the whole argument that they had over Venezuela, it completely collapsed after they ended up taking Maduro out of the country, because it went from we're fighting the cartels because the entire Venezuelan government works with Tren de Aragua, to now today they're saying we're actually allying with the Venezuelan government that we claim is a part of the cartel and works for Tren de Aragua and is funneling drugs into America because we want their oil. And basically that was all a lie, because we're not even talking about that anymore. And that doesn't really look too good. And it's like, what other purpose are they going to come out with after the fact that we went into Colombia and Cuba for? Because I'll be entirely honest with y'all, it's obviously not for spreading democracy, because we just took Maduro out of the country and we allowed his entire dictatorship to remain intact after we took Maduro out. Literally Maduro's vice dictator then stepped up to become the dictator of the country, and now we're like, okay, that's fine. We'll just work with that and we'll let it keep being a dictatorship. So we didn't bring democracy to Venezuela. We didn't really curb Chinese or Russian influence in the country, because that government's aligned with China and Russia still, although they're saying otherwise at the moment. They still are aligned to the Russians and the Chinese. And we haven't really achieved much of anything in Venezuela, to be honest, rather than taking Maduro out of the country and putting him on trial here. So I would say that I don't really know. I'd and also it's like, once you start enough conflicts around the world, folks, you start to raise the global tensions, and then it becomes a lot easier for other countries to justify their own conflicts by going off the example, well, America has 3 active wars going on right now, so we can do one as well.
Yeah, that's a huge risk. I was just about to mention that when you got done with your point there. This is going to embolden other countries to do similar land grabs, or also similar special military operations, if you want to call it that. This is going to spark it. So if China was having second thoughts about taking Taiwan, or if Russia was having second thoughts about invading the Baltics, this is probably going to make them think in their head, well, we're more likely to do it now, because if the U.S. is going to conquer South America, then we're going to take some territory as well, and we're going to start with Taiwan, and we're going to start with the Baltics. that could make them think that, because they're already thinking that now. I mean, China says every single day they're going to reunify Taiwan. So they were already inclined to do it, and now they might be emboldened to do it because they're like, well, if the U.S. can go around invading people and also attacking, then why the hell are we not going to do it? Obviously, they're going to do it. So, I mean, it's literally giving permission to these adversarial countries to go and do the exact thing we're trying to prevent them from doing by doing this ourselves.
Yeah, I would say so. Also, someone said he took Maduro out, what, 2 days ago? And you think he should already have taken out the entire regime by now? Well, the thing is, dude, is that yeah, I guess you're drinking lots of Kool-Aid, but we're not taking the government of Venezuela out. We're negotiating with them right now. And as a matter of fact, we're now saying the respectable Venezuelan government, which is still the dictator-aligned Maduro regime just without Maduro, and now we're making trade deals with them. And the fact that we're making deals with that government is showing us that we plan on them staying around. Because you don't make deals with a government that you're planning on completely toppling. That's like going to Saddam Hussein while we're invading Iraq and going, hey, a deal about that oil, and then making a deal with them on the oil. Why in the world would we even go through that effort? We're about to overthrow his whole government in 2003. So that doesn't make any sense at all. The reason why we're negotiating with them for oil and whatnot is because now we're just recognizing the Maduro regime as the government of Venezuela just without Maduro. So all of the claims that we have that the Venezuelan government under Maduro, the entire thing was involved in drug dealing, apparently that's just gone to the wayside, and we're now fine with the cartel running Venezuela, according to how we're interacting with that government right now. We have no plans of toppling them, because clearly we're making deals with them, and that would make no sense to make deals with them if we plan on toppling them, because those deals are going to be null and void once their government collapses, and then we're going to have to make a new deal with whoever is in charge of Venezuela at that point. So clearly, we're acting like this is just the existing government in the country, and we're acting like that's going to be a permanent basis now. So that's quite questionable, I'll have to say. And on top of that, that's not just questionable for the fact of the U.S. principle of it, but it's also not making any sense because the vice president was just brought into the presidency, and she had to kiss the ring of the Russian ambassador, the Chinese ambassador, and the Iranian ambassador, already showing us that their loyalties are still with the Axis powers. And on top of that, another thing is that they are not a democratic state, which is generally a key Western principle of having an allied nation, is at least some form of a something along the lines of a more liberal monarchy, at least to some extent, although that's kind of a little bit hard-pressed, or we kind of overlook it in the Middle East in general, or some form of a functioning democracy to some extent. But we're allowing this dictatorship that is technically, according to us, involved with Tren de Aragua to now run the country, and we're just going to make deals with them now that Maduro is gone, but the whole apparatus is still there. That just doesn't make any sense. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, and we have also been able to hear, moving on from that and back up into Washington, that it appears that today the Chinese have apparently hacked into the U.S. Congressional Committee staff's email systems and are gaining access to internal communications at the moment. Not really the greatest thing to hear, but I'm sure the Chinese will be getting maybe nothing out of that. But moving on from that, we've also been able to hear that apparently oil companies are incredibly leery about the statements that the President of the United States is making, as apparently some U.S. oil companies have stated that they need serious guarantees from Washington before committing big new investments in Venezuela. So apparently they're also incredibly hesitant about returning to Venezuela at all in the current conditions, because anyone with two eyes, folks, could see that removing Maduro from the Maduro government and allowing the rest of the Maduro regime to remain intact and run the country is very questionable, and that might flip on a dime at any minute. And so they don't even want to put any money into the Venezuelan nation at the moment to try and reinvest in the oil infrastructure, because it might just get snatched from them at any minute now because the Maduro regime is still there. We've also seen that apparently the United States also stated the following today: I have just been informed that Venezuela is going to be purchasing only American-made products with the money they receive from our new oil deal. These purchases will include, among other things, American agricultural products, American-made medicines, medical devices, and equipment to improve Venezuela's electric grid and energy facilities. In other words, Venezuela is committing to doing business with the United States of America as their principal partner, a wise choice and a very good thing for the people of Venezuela and the United States. we didn't get an official statement from the Venezuelan government confirming this, and I also have to say that the president has had a way of kind of just saying things that actually have not happened or will never happen. So I don't even know if this one's accurate, but this was apparently a statement out of Washington today. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that apparently the U.S. president also threatened Raytheon today in the following statement. I've been informed by the Department of War the defense contractor Raytheon has been the least responsive to the needs of the Department of War, the slowest in increasing their volume, and the most aggressive spending on their shareholders rather than the needs and demands of the United States military. Raytheon seems to think this is the former administration and this is business as usual. It's not. Either Raytheon steps up and starts investing in more upfront investment like plants and equipment, or they will no longer be doing business with the Department of War. Also, if Raytheon wants further business with the United States government, under no circumstances will they be allowed to do any additional stock buybacks where they have spent tens of billions of dollars until they're able to get their act together. Our country comes first, and they're going to have to learn that the hard way. So it appears that on top of threatening foreign governments today, it's apparently also time to start threatening American companies in the defense industry that employ thousands of people in the production of weapons and are also significant moneymakers, at least for the United States economy. So it also appears that that's also on the menu today as well. But moving on from that, we have also been able to hear in one last statement that the president is now going to be upping the military budget by a significant margin. After long and difficult negotiations with senators, congressmen, secretaries, and other political representatives, I've determined that for the good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, our military budget for the year 2027 should not be $1 trillion, but rather $1.5 trillion, a 50% increase. This will allow us to build the dream military that we've long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure regardless of the foe. If it weren't for tremendous numbers being produced by terrorists from other countries, many of which in the past have ripped off the United States at levels never before seen, I would say that at the $1 trillion number, but because of the tariffs and the tremendous income that they bring, amounts being generated that would have been unthinkable in the past, especially just 1 year ago under the prior administration, the worst in the history of our country, we were able to easily hit the $1.5 trillion number, while at the same time producing an unparalleled military force and having the ability to, at the same time, pay down debt and likewise pay a substantial dividend to moderate income patriots within our country. So there's that statement as well. So apparently the military
That's a wild increase, 50%. I mean, that's 500 billion extra he's adding to the, or trying to add to the military budget. That's a wild increase. The way I interpret that is the U.S. is preparing to fight World War III. That's the way I interpret it, because I'm not sure any other reason you would increase it by 50%. I mean, that's not a small increase. That's massive.
Yeah, that's like right now, folks. Our largest military adversary in the world is China, and they have a $300 billion military budget, meaning that currently at $1 trillion annually, our military budget is around 3 times larger than our nearest adversary, meaning that we outspend them 3 to 1. With a $1.5 trillion military budget, that now means that we will be competing with our nearest adversary, which is China, at $300 billion a year for a military budget, at basically a 5 to 1 spending ratio. Right now, in terms of spending ratio, if we were to put that in an attacker's advantage, we already have the attacker's advantage against the Chinese because of the 3 to 1 spending ratio we have. With a 5 to 1 spending ratio, that's just becoming wildly high. And while I'm all for national defense and we're always for supporting American and Western interests around the globe, I also don't understand how this is really leaning into the whole deal of, according to the national defense strategy, we're basically pulling out of everywhere in the world and focusing on the Americas only. And I don't even really understand at that point why the military budget would be increasing any longer. It should be decreasing at that point because we're having to cover a far smaller portion of the world, at least in terms of power projection. But now we're increasing the budget by an entire 50%. So a little bit interesting with that. And, you know, not to bring this up, but I thought that the government was supposed to be trying to find ways to cut down on the budget. But we're now adding apparently an extra $500 billion in spending a year just on the military. So
I'm just not really sure where they're coming up with the money for this either. And right now, it's simply a proposal. It's not a definite fact right now, but apparently the president's pursuing this budget increase. I'm just not sure if the tariffs are really bringing in that kind of money, because we obviously don't know the exact numbers in the public, or at least I'm not aware of them. But for the tariffs to have brought in allegedly 500 billion or somewhere close to it. I'm kind of have a hard time believing that. Not trying to just say that they're making it up, but I kind of have a hard time believing that's a large number like that. So I see some people saying they're just going to print it. I mean, they could, but at the same time, though, I thought we were cutting down on debt at the same time. I get the fact that it's for national defense, but, you know, $500 billion, I mean, that's a lot of money. That could go for a lot of other things.
And also on top of that, I just have to point out that tariffs have not been that lucrative to increase the military budget by 500 billion and then apparently do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Because over the course of the entire last year of 2025, the U.S. only gained $113 billion in tariffs and excise fees for goods entering the United States of America. So that doesn't even cover hardly 20% of the $500 billion increase for the U.S. military, much less the dividend to middle-class citizens that's apparently going to be paid, and also paying down the debt. As a matter of fact, that would be increasing our budget deficit by about at least $380 billion extra annually by increasing the military spending budget to $1.5 trillion. So there is nothing out there at the moment that would generally suggest, because we do have the tariffs number, and it's $113 billion over the whole of 2025, which is a 365-day period. There's nothing to suggest that they are making that much money from tariffs to increase the budget by $500 billion, and then also have money left over to start paying off the debt, and then basically paying out money to everyone in the middle class in the United States. Like, the money's not there.
And also, for a $500 billion increase, with that being a 50% increase, I just thought about this as well. A more straightforward question: What are they needing to spend $500 billion on for the military? Because we have a pretty formidable Navy, and to build ships, you don't need $500 billion to build ships. That's overkill, to say the least, just to build more ships. For our Air Force is top notch. Our Army is already pretty large as well, and even if you wanted to increase the size of it, you don't need $500 billion to do that. So, what's the $500 billion supposed to be allocated for, really?
Also, I'm just saying this, folks. I'm not trying to get political here, but I do have to say this because they said this. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the president and his administration way earlier on in 2025 that were saying that the military is basically a scam system, to where they can't even account for really where the $1 trillion is going, and they need to trim down the amount of spending and excess in the military. So they then didn't do that, and now we're saying that we're actually going to increase the budget in a one-year period by 50%, which has basically never been heard of except for the Second World War and other large conflicts along that line. So I don't really know what's going on with that, because, you know, that seems to be contradicting prior statements that were made earlier on in 2025, and it's also completely contradicting the statement that they were supposed to be cutting down on excessive spending and start balancing the budgets. That way the national debt can be paid off. If anything, this is massively increasing the national debt, while representing it as it's actually not, which it is. So I don't really know how in the world that's working. So that was a statement from the president. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking right now about the future visit by the Colombian president to Washington, D.C., which is apparently going to be happening sometime soon. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we are hearing that, according to sources, the United States is arranging for the Colombian president's visit to the White House to discuss the ongoing tensions between the two countries. And do you think that they're going to arrest the Colombian president when he shows up, if he even shows up in the first place? And 46% said that is not a real possibility, so the answer would be no, while 30% said the Colombian president probably won't go, and 15% said yes, they will likely arrest him right in the White House. And I really doubt that Petro is going to go. I highly doubt that he'll go. If he goes, I'll be somewhat shocked. He'll honestly have some pretty decent balls if he decides to go to the White House after everything that's been said. So if he goes, I wouldn't rule out them arresting him. I'll be honest. It would be unprecedented, but I wouldn't rule it out because the Petro has been running his mouth like crazy, and he's pissed the president off bad. So they could arrest him. There's no telling. And also, I'm not sure if it would be, they could come up with a justification for it. They could try to get maybe a warrant or something before he shows up to arrest him. There's no telling. So I see some people saying they won't, but I mean, don't put it past them. I mean, if you haven't learned that yet, don't put it past them. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that it probably isn't really a real possibility, because that would be unheard. Well, you know, some things that have been happening recently are basically unheard of, like threatening to invade Greenland and, you know, nabbing Maduro right out of the middle of the country while not really going to war with them. So it's not entirely out of the question, but historically it should be out of the question. If that happens, to where Petro is arrested, I can promise you all this, folks. Nobody in the world is going to make a state diplomatic visit to the United States throughout the remainder of this term. Not a single person will. Because that generally will show that any form of diplomatic immunity provided under state visits doesn't exist in the United States, and nobody's going to take the chance of being the leader of a foreign country, coming over to the United States, and then just arbitrarily having the president arrest you on the spot while you're in the middle of the United States and you really can't do anything about it. So that would be quite bad if that was done. So I would generally assume that it probably wouldn't be, but you know, you never know. So with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. But with that, we are going to be moving on into Europe for a brief minute, because as many of y'all know, right now there is a huge amount of tension that's being caused over the Greenland situation, and we have been able to hear that France, according to their government, is working with its allies on a plan should the U.S. move on Greenland, according to a Reuters report. We understand that apparently this is some form of an armed defensive plan, because the Danish have actually given orders today to their territorial defense forces within Greenland that any hostile activity on Greenland is to be met with open fire, including unannounced U.S. military activity. So if the just to let y'all know this, there's a huge amount of U.S. bases in Greenland. So if any U.S. soldiers are seen in what appears to be somewhat larger numbers, possibly moving as a part of a military operation outside of those bases, Danish forces within the area actually have the authority to fire on those U.S. service members at this point, and possibly even kill them if the need arises, because at the moment, the Danish government is incredibly concerned and paranoid that any unauthorized U.S. actions in Greenland may be the beginning of a military annexation of the island. So it appears that the tensions have become so high that right now, the Danish are actually having to think about possibly firing on U.S. soldiers that might be conducting unauthorized action in Greenland, due to the fact that they may be trying to annex the island. So a fairly concerning sort of a development, and once again showing that tensions are getting incredibly strained, at least within the NATO alliance at the moment, over the situation with Greenland. And at this point, it appears that the NATO alliance may actually be soon to sever or split down the middle over the situation with Greenland. It doesn't appear that anyone in Europe is in support. Well, nobody in the world is in support of the U.S. taking Greenland, in the Western world at least, except for the United States. So doesn't really look like a good move right there. And also, I saw someone say that signed their death warrant. Well, I mean, obviously the Danish wouldn't be able to defend their island. The U.S. would win. But it's the fact of the matter that they're not going to just let it go without a fight, if you don't understand that. Clearly, the Danish will not win. But at the same time, that's absolutely ridiculous that the Danish are having to even consider firing on U.S. forces, because the situation has gotten that concerning that the U.S. might just try and illegally annex the island of Greenland. So I'd have to say, not really a good move. In my opinion, this is something that is not looking at well at all in foreign policy. Europe is the most important part of the world that we have any dealings with. We have massive trade relations with them. They are the second, well, actually, in some forms, they are actually the largest military force in the world in terms of active service members. They are generally the second largest force in the world in terms of military equipment. They are a massive nuclear power between Britain and France combined, with about 1,000 nuclear weapons at their disposal. That is larger than the Chinese arsenal, and that's actually the third largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, behind the United States and the Russian Federation on paper. So the European Union, and generally the NATO contention in Europe, is the most important ally to have in the world for really anyone. China would kill to have Europe in their pocket if they could have it like the U.S. has had it for decades. So I don't really know why in the world we're willing to sacrifice the entirety of Europe and all of the benefits that it actually brings, that some people are too blind and uninformed to understand, to just try and take some useless island in the Arctic that we're already on, as far as our armed forces.
Well, it's not useless. I wouldn't say it's useless. In the event of World War III, it would be highly strategic to have Greenland, but we don't have to take it, because, like you just mentioned, we're already on Greenland. We have Thule Air Base there. We have other bases there as well, and we're working with Denmark to make sure that is the case. So, I mean, that seems like a fine thing to me, just to keep cooperating with them instead of doing it this other crazy way.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is that it's useless compared to Europe. Like, if you compare Greenland versus Europe, if we couldn't have Greenland, it's far better to have Europe than Greenland.
Yeah, I would say so. You don't want to blow up the NATO alliance over taking Greenland for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, because people are like, well, it helps us have a position in the Arctic. Yeah, but I mean, if you lose $1 trillion of collective trade cap with the Europeans because they completely cut off relations with us, I have a feeling that whatever benefit we just got out of Greenland was obliterated and, in fact, completely offset. And the reverse, it's actually detrimental to the United States because we lost the entirety of Europe in the process of as an ally. That is a far worse situation. And on top of that, that's not even the scenario that we're involved in right now. We're not losing Greenland. We're already there. We already operate the Pacific Space Force Base and a million other bases inside of Greenland that allow for the U.S. Air Force to operate in the Arctic. It allows for our firm satellites to be coordinated to detect nuclear launches from anyone else in the world flying over the Arctic. We basically have everything there that we would ever want in Greenland already. So we're already there. Taking Greenland doesn't do anything but screw us over in foreign policy by seeing the entirety of Europe turn against us, and then we're sitting in the middle of the world on our own, with no one else on our side. That's not a good position to be in at all. The only countries that would be on our side at that point would be Japan and South Korea. Basically, everyone else would have jumped ship at that point. So that's not a good position to be in whatsoever. But moving on from that and on into the rest of our news, actually, before we do, there's actually a lot of people talking at the moment right now about the reported raise of the $1 trillion U.S. military budget by a whopping 50%. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the poll says the U.S. president proposes raising the $1 trillion military budget, which is already the biggest in the world, by the way, by 50%, up to $1.5 trillion, which is $1 trillion plus $500 billion. It's something like a lot of money. And would you support this? 44% said no, that's excessive and unnecessary, while 34% said yes, I support the 50% increase, and 15% said I support a smaller increase of the budget, but not $500 billion. So I'll be honest. I've really not heard a good reason why the budget should be raised by 50%. That's, like I mentioned earlier, that's not a small increase. That is a monumental increase, and we already had the biggest budget in the world. So I get the fact that everybody's aware that World War III is coming around the corner, but, we also have other issues as well that could be using that money quite well also. So we seem to be able to come up with $500 billion when we need to, but not for other issues, which seems a bit strange. So I would say I support the increase. I actually would support it. I would be with the 33% if that we have credible intelligence that World War III is happening for a fact, and that we're not going to be the ones causing it. We don't want to be the ones that cause World War III, and that's the reason why we're raising our budget. We need to make sure we're only on a defensive basis. Hopefully, we're not raising it because we plan on starting World War III. We don't want to be the bad guys this time. We want to be the good guys, of course. We want to be the defenders of democracy, not the new Russia on the block. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's entirely excessive and unnecessary because we can already go up against China and Russia at the same time. And as a matter of fact, we could go up against every adversary that we have at the same time and outspend them all into perpetuity. And on top of that, still outdo them in perpetuity as well. And even at this point, with the funding that we have right now, I would say that the funding should only be increased at that sort of a massive margin the year that we go to war. Because at this point right now, we are spending $1 trillion a year. It's 3.4% of our GDP. And if you compare that to the next adversary, which is the Chinese, they spend $314 billion. And the Russians right now, at wartime peak against Ukraine, are spending $150 billion. So if you combine the two of those together, you end up with about a $450 billion military budget, which is still just half of what we spend annually. So it would take 2 Russias and 2 Chinas to actually get up to the level of our military spending as it is right now in peacetime, not wartime. Because in wartime, military budgets always increase, and they usually increase exponentially until the end of a conflict for the most part. But right now, we could easily outdo them in terms of our military capabilities just from our spending parity alone.
But though you would not be able to outdo them if you didn't have the NATO alliance on your side. If it's the United States fighting on its own island, like over here in the United States on North America, and we're the only ones fighting by ourselves against Russia, China, etc., and we've fractured the NATO alliance, you might need 1.5 trillion or even more than that to defend our country. Because at that point you don't have NATO to help. It's just us. So that might explain maybe why they're trying to raise it, perhaps, because they plan on fracturing the NATO alliance and they want to get ready for that huge gap that's going to be in place.
Maybe, but that would be devastating. And speaking of the current situation right now, let me put this into perspective for all of y'all. The U.S. has, in terms of combat aviation, which means helicopters, aircraft, and everything, we have 14,000 combat aviation elements, including fixed wing and rotary wing. That's helicopters and jets. 14,000. China only has around 4,000 roughly, so we outdo them by a factor of 3.5 times the amount of air power. Russia only has about 1,200, and that number is decreasing with every passing month in the war in Ukraine generally. So we outdo Russia by a factor of 1,400% in terms of air power. In terms of navies, we outdo the Russians basically 3-1. With the Chinese, it's technically a 1-to-1 parity at this point, but a lot of Chinese ships are motor torpedo boats and anti-ship missile carriers, which are incredibly small and generally are coastal patrol, meaning that they do not have a massive seafaring navy like we do in reality. So in every single way, in terms of air power, in terms of the Navy, in terms of the Army, in terms of the Marines, in terms of every branch of the armed forces that we have, they generally outdo our adversaries by 3-to-1 and 5-to-1 ratios in terms of manpower, equipment, firepower, and also spending abilities in every way. So I don't really understand what the point would be for a 50% increase, because starting off from a peacetime footing going into a war, we're already in a position to where we could take China, Russia, and Iran on, technically, and probably beat them all in the end. But also, by the way, folks, I have to add in, if NATO fractures and we get booted out of Europe, we can't even fight the Russians, really, at that point, because we're going to have to be fighting them all the way from the United States, meaning that extended long-range air operations would be our only possibility throughout that entire conflict. And it also would be the case against the Chinese as well if we end up souring our relations with our entire Western sphere and we end up getting booted out of everywhere that we are in the Indo-Pacific right now as well by the countries that host us. So that also is something to remember as well, is that the U.S. can take on everyone in the world that's our adversaries at the same time and win, but the only reason that we can even get to there to knock their lights out is because we have a whole bunch of bases in our ally countries that allow us to literally fight like it's our own home territory over there. So, you know, a little bit important to remember that, because if the plan is to basically boot NATO to the curbside and then basically be NATO on our own combined, that's not really going to work out too well, because we still at that point don't even have the abilities to power project, because we don't have any allies anymore that allow for our forces to base inside of their countries. So that would be a pretty horrific idea. So I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, because I'm all for the United States protecting itself, and I'm all for American and Western interests, but increasing military spending by 50% in 1 year when we're not even in wartime is absurd, and considering that we're already that far off from our adversaries at this point in spending already. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are going to be moving out of that news and on into Ukraine, because we finally are getting to the Ukraine war news, folks. And it's time for us to get on into Russia, because there has been some very interesting developments here today. We have been able to hear that a Russian oligarch who was in charge of a major logistics supplier to the Russian military has died in a helicopter crash.
A nice helicopter.
Oh!
Oh.
Ёб твою мать!
Oh, crap.
Ёб твою мать! Охуеть!
Honestly, I don't think that was a hit. I think that was just an accident.
I think it may have been. The guy flew right into what appears to be some sort of a ski lift cable. Don't know why he'd be flying that low through his skiing course, but, you know, appears that he won't be running that company any longer.
It seems like it should have been survivable, actually. It seems like it should have been survivable, unless it's just not as dramatic looking this far away.
I don't know, man. That helicopter has hit like the Family Guy death pose on the ground, so I think I don't think that might be survivable. Like, I'm not really sure, but still interesting to hear that the guy ended up going out that way. But moving on from that, we also were able to hear that within Moscow, a jet engine factory for aircraft and helicopters has been hit and caught on fire. We don't know how significant the damage is to this factory, but we were assuming that it may be out of action for a while. Very significant.
That's a big hit right there, honestly. That thing produces a bunch of jet engines and helicopter engines. That's a big loss for the Russians.
A very big loss, I have to say. I have to agree. But moving on from that, we are going to be moving on down into Ukraine, as we have also been able to see some interesting location unknowns. First, we were able to see that the Russians are still using larger numbers of cavalry, but it appears that the Ukrainians are trying to be merciful to the horses and basically force the Russians to dismount the horses so that way they can hit the Russians without harming or injuring the horses. I gotta say that's actually wildly humane considering that this is the middle of an active war.
Looks like they're doing a good job of unseating them too, because they're running now. Oh, it's muddy too. It's really muddy, slippery.
Oh, bleed. But they got the gun.
Man.
But
No wet floor signs out here either. I guess they're up for a liability issue.
Man, next thing you know, they're going to get that attorney from Seinfeld. He's going to be saying, no wet floor signs on the road. That's egregious, outrageous, downright ludicrous. But anyways, moving on from that, we also have been able to see another clip of apparently the birth of a new Russian drone. Let me get my best David Attenborough voice going for this one, folks, because we've got to have it. Here in the wild plains of Ukraine, life begins to bloom. A Russian car, specifically that of a UAZ-469, is giving the gift of life. Here we can see its offspring, a young autonomous drone, making its first steps into the wild unknown.
What in the world? It's a tracked robot. They have literally a gas canister on the back of it.
Yes, it is a fascinating creature. Apparently an evolution of the UAZ, as it is an offspring of such a vehicle. We can see it wandering off into the wild after being birthed by its mother. It will most likely have a long and adventurous life inside of the Ukrainian plains. Off it goes.
Oh, look at that thing go. That's actually got some capabilities behind it. Look at it. It's got some off-roading.
Off it goes to begin its life anew.
Really just right off into wild blue. Oh, what the? Man, you could have prepared me for that at least. What the hell? Wait a minute, that is shocked the hell. I mean, I have not seen this clip. Back that thing up for a second. Back that thing up, man. That's crazy. I wasn't even expecting that. What the hell? Did Ukrainians hit it?
No, he ran over a landmine.
What the hell? It only survived like 10 seconds.
Dude, I was thinking, man, I was like, please stop trying to end the commentary. I was trying to do the David Attenborough thing so that way you could just like ride off into the sunset and be like, it's beginning its new life. And then it run over the mine and it explode. Oh my god. Let's watch that.
That's insane. That's that thing. That I've never really seen one like that from the Russians. That must have been an expensive little loss they just took there.
Bro, they took out their latest and greatest drone, and within 20 seconds it was vaporized by a TM-62. Oh my god, watch this again, folks. It is hilarious. They literally vaporizes on impact once the mine goes off. It is gone instantly.
That is a huge explosion. Also, that gas went up too. Like, that also didn't help the situation. That thing just went the way of the dodo.
Bro, and the explosion was on it. Dude, it sounded like a damn 2,000-pound bomb went off on that thing out there in that field. And then this guy, dude, he just turned around and goes, yeah, but because he's like the drone that we were hoping on. It's gone.
Yeah, but.
Yes, oh, блядь.
Oh my god, I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. That is probably the funniest clip I have seen in a minute out of the war in Ukraine, is that they literally unleash a brand new drone onto the battlefield, and it crawls away literally within view, running over a landmine, and immediately disintegrating from the explosion of it. I mean, that is just poetry at this point. I mean, really something crazy. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into our next clip, where we also get to see the Special Operations Forces of the 8th SOF Regiment taking out some Russians. Here's the clip. We can see him opening up the hatch here.
Oh.
And there's the drone. And now we see them engaging.
Right down the hatch.
Ooh, a grenade down the hole. And another one.
They really just fed that one to him.
Man, they said, oh, you want seconds? Have another. And they toss it down there.
Here, have some of these collard greens. Oh.
Nice rifle, by the way.
That almost looks like a Daniel. I think, wait a minute, hold on, that is a Daniel. Wait a minute, go
Oh,
back.
shoot, it
It's got the
is.
same stock on it and everything, unless they just got the stock. Like, it looks like it is, like, most likely a Daniel, probably.
I mean, it's decently likely that it may be. That's actually pretty neat. Also, man, why in the world was that, like, the most polite spraying I've ever seen of an outpost? He was like, okay, time to get the mag. Brr, brr. Like, he's just like feeding bullets into the outpost. Look at this. He's like, okay, everyone, time for your shower of bullets. Like literally,
Man,
dude, it's the most
and that
tame
nice
thing.
suppressed sound, too. Also, very light little thunk, because it's got the suppressor on it.
Man, that was the most polite spray I've ever seen into a trench. We now see them negotiating with those that are left alive down there. And here they come.
Сколько вас? Сюда иди. Сюда иди, блядь. Ползи. Ползи. Ползи.
This Russian right here is a champ. He ate a grenade and bullets.
На живот.
Man, he came out asking for seconds. I mean, really a legend here.
Один до мене. Лежи, завали ебало. Сколько вас там?
And there's the second one. There was actually an entire Russian fire team inside of that outpost. There was 5 guys in there. Only 2 of them came out. The other guys are stuck in there for good. So it looks like they did some pretty good work in the 8th SOF around that area. Although we don't know exactly where this was. The 8th SOF didn't actually disclose the exact location of this operation. So that's why it's in the location unknowns. But moving on out of that clip and on into the Russian casualty report, we have actually been able to see something quite fortunate today. Oh!
Hey, look, one Bobcat right there. It's very nice. That wouldn't happen to be that thing we just watched blow up, would it?
Maybe. Like,
I think it might be, actually. I think that might be the Bobcat of the day. I think it was that thing. That's the loss.
They're gonna play taps for the little thing. But beyond that. Oh, man. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But anyways, beyond that, we have been able to hear the Miss Disa, keeper of the records, has stated that troop losses rise to above 1,000, but average does not. Other categories under average, and a correction, submarine total is 2 since December 16th. Need to fix the graphic. Honestly, they do, Miss Disa. I would agree. They've kept that for such a long time. But moving on into the total of the casualty report, we have been able to see that 1,040 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 2 APCs, 122 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 26 artillery pieces, 406 drones, 2 MRSs, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, a pretty decent day, and I gotta say, it's a wonderful thing to see that the Russians are taking such losses. Moving on from that and on out of the location unknowns, it's time for us to move on up into Kupiansk, where we were able to see the 5th Brigade hitting the Russians. Oh, look at this. It's the skiff, bled. Dang. Oh. Man, they got them Israeli drones. They said, give us that nitrous up firepower.
Just a big boom.
A boom shakalaka. Oh, look, another one. Is that a landmine? It didn't go off. Huh. Well, that's the end of that clip, but it looks like the 5th Brigade, the skiff, is doing work up there. Moving on from that and on down the Kupiansk line and towards the Severyansky Forest, we also saw in the Severyansky Forest that the Ukrainians were also hitting the Russian forces. The 81st Air Mobile Brigade was targeting them and knocking them out. Oh, is that an ATV? No longer. Is that a dirt bike? No longer. Is that a Russian? No longer. Is that a car?
Oh,
no longer.
They actually had a winter camo that the guy was wearing back there. That's kind of surprising for the Russians.
Man, that guy's the only guy in the entire brigade of 10,000 men that got that winter camo. That's like seeing an ultra rare Russian on the battlefield as one that wears winter camo. As you can see, most of them don't.
That's a luxury they don't often get.
Man, they said, you have survived on the front line longer than everyone else. 2 days. For this reason, you get winter camo. And when they like bring it out and show it to him, man, you can hear like the angelic choir. He's like, oh, bled. And it didn't even help him. Like, the drone still found him anyways. But moving on from that and on down to the Pokrovsk front, we also saw down here a little battle taxi getting hit. Or, as we call it here in America, a clown car. What do you think?
Yes, pulling up to the block.
Man, I guess you could say their whip is about to get blasted. Ooh. Oh, wait a minute. It actually had a little taxi sign on it. Right there. Oh, dude.
Oh, man, it was a taxi before it turned into a thing.
The irony. Man, it was a legit battle taxi. Oh,
That's
my
crazy.
God. I cannot believe that. Moving on from that, we also got to see in our next clip that there was also more Russian forces getting hit around Pokrovsk, this time by the 150th. Ooh. Oh.
Oh,
Man.
Damn.
Oh. Dang.
Oh.
Oh.
Jeez.
Dang. We're just going to keep that going in a loop. Oh. Dang. Jeez. Oh. Like it's just over and over. Man, they were actually slamming these guys around here.
Not sure what we're looking at, but they're hitting something.
I don't even know what we're... That's why I'm not even giving commentary. Most of these clips, I'm like, they're hitting something. It's like, I don't know what, though. And usually it's done in such a rapid-fire montage, it's really hard to provide commentary on it sometimes, folks, because once I'm saying one thing, they've already moved on to the next clip. But they are obliterating them. Oh, a Ural. That was rare, actually. That drone told him to land now. This one says land now as well. This one says ahoy. Ahoy, me boy. SpongeBob, me boy. Oh, dang. That drone was carrying the white smoke. Ooh. And that's the end of that clip. But one hell of a thing to see right there, I'll have to say. Moving on from that, we are going to be moving on down and into the area of Vasilivka, where we were able to see the Ukrainians SOF conducting an operation behind the lines in Zaporizhia. We could see that they were using Google Maps.
Wow, that's a touchscreen. That's pretty impressive. That was a huge touchscreen.
That's where the Ukrainians are scamming all of the money from the American taxpayer is for touchscreen TVs. Like, damn Ukrainians.
Looks like they're putting it to good use.
That's absolutely sick. Yeah, Michael Skywalker apparently doesn't understand. It's a war between us and them, so not really a lot of an ability to cry there. This is either we're getting destroyed or they.
That's why Luke was the main character, not Michael Skywalker.
Oh, bum 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 bum.
That's the doozy there. I tell you what, I'm gonna have to get a second job now. They say keep your day job. I said, oh, give me a second one.
Man, they said keep your day job, and I said I know because I have a part-time job with your mother at night. Oh, that's like oh, ow, but oh man, we can see them at work behind the lines conducting these raids. Oh, look, a little AKS-74U. Look at that. How neat, folks. How neat. And people said the crank is garbage. Well, the Ukrainian Special Forces are using it.
Rumor has it before the Ruskies picked up this whole war situation here that a lot of these guys that are now soldiers were working 3 jobs.
Man, that's honestly tough. But nothing beats the Secretary of State, who currently is working 8 jobs. like,
That's true. I was just about to mention that, by the way. I think he might have gotten fired from his Venezuela position, though, it sounds like. They might be leaving Delcy in charge. So that might have been the quickest hiring and firing of his whole career.
Man, honestly. And we see them.
What's this man saying?
They're saying things in Russian and Ukrainian. See, it's
wheat
showing
stalks. What is this vegetation around them here? This is strange looking.
This is the vegetation called the uchkaduk, which is a special crop found within the Zaporizhia region.
That's a strange crop right there.
I actually don't know what that is. The Uchkaduk is a town, I believe, in Kazakhstan or somewhere around there, so I actually don't know. But they're guiding these prisoners on out of there. One hell of a raid, I'll say. You know, this looks like a duck hunting region, Matt. You know, where like the duck hunters would go in the peacetime and like, you know, go hunting for the ducks.
I think so, something like that, like a couple of ducks.
Yeah, like those. But anyways, that's the end of that clip, and it looks like they got a couple of Russians under their belt. Well, moving on from that, it's time for us to go on up to Kyiv and cover the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of the war. So, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Дякую тобі, дорогі Еммануеле, пане президенте. Дякую за запрошення і організацію. І Кіре, пане прем'єр-міністре, Фрідріху, пане канцлеру, Стіве, Джареду, шановні журналісти, всі присутні. Перш за все, я дякую за нашу зустріч. Це одна з найбільш представницьких зустрічей коаліції охочих. 27 лідерів держав, Євросоюз, НАТО, представники Туреччини, Японії, Австралії, Нової Зеландії. Дійсно глобальна зустріч і дуже високий рівень дискусій. Важливо, що сьогодні є ґрунтовні документи коаліції. Це не тільки слова, конкретика. Спільна декларація усіх країн коаліції та тристороння декларація Франції, Британії та України. Документи ці є. І це сигнал, наскільки серйозна Європа і вся коаліція охочих готові працювати заради реальної безпеки. Цими документами ми посилюємо подальшу юридичну роботу в країнах з парламентами, щоб у той момент, коли дипломатія спрацює на завершенні війни, у нас була повна готовність розмістити сили коаліції охочих. Деталі пропрацьовані в системі інших документів. Визначено, які країни готові брати лідерство в елементах гарантування безпеки на землі, в небі, на морі, у відновленні. Визначено, які сили потрібні. Визначено, як сили будуть управлятись, на яких рівнях буде командування. Має бути визначено, як буде працювати моніторинг. Має бути абсолютно чітко визначено, як буде підтримуватись та фінансуватись належна сила та кількість української армії. Сьогодні я про це говорив окремо. Ми вважаємо ключовий елемент – наша українська сила. На основі нашої армії будуть ефективно працювати всі інші елементи. Військові Франції, Британії, України працювали детально щодо розміщення, щодо кількості, щодо конкретних видів зброї, щодо складових збройних сил, які потрібні і які зможуть спрацювати. У нас вже є такі необхідні деталі. Ми розуміємо, яка країна і на що готова з усіх країн коаліція охочих. Я хочу подякувати кожному лідеру, я хочу подякувати кожній державі, які дійсно хочуть бути частиною мирного рішення. Дуже предметно ми говорили сьогодні з американською командою щодо моніторингу, щоб не було порушень миру. Америка готова працювати щодо цього. Це для нас дуже важливо. Один з найбільш важливих компонентів – це стримування. Це інструменти, які не допустять нової російської агресії, і все це ми бачимо. Також ми значно просунулися з американською переговорною групою в роботі над документами. Сьогодні тут в Парижі були і ще будуть у нас окремі зустрічі з Стівом Віткофом та Джаредом Кушнером. Ми вважаємо, що у нас готові документи щодо гарантій безпеки двосторонні – Україна, Америка, а також тристоронні документи. Ми розраховуємо, що найближчим часом можливе підписання і вже пропрацьовуємо ці формати. Дай Бог, щоб нам дійсно це вдалося. Ми цінуємо готовність Сполучених Штатів дати підтримку силам, які мають не допускати повторення російської агресії. Бекстоп від Америки – для нас це важливо. Ми розуміємо, який може бути таймінг всіх процесів. Всі погоджуємо, що це мають бути такі гарантії безпеки, які засновані на юридичних зобов'язаннях, зокрема, затверджені Конгресом Сполучених Штатів. Звісно, є питання ще з документами, є деякі питання з документами 20 пунктів. Найбільше питання, що потрібно ще працювати, це питання територіальне. Ми обговорили деякі ідеї, які можуть допомогти. Якщо команди не зможуть вирішити деякі питання, можна виносити це питання на рівень лідерів. Сьогодні ще ми продовжимо. Українська команда залишається для додаткових зустрічей та додаткових перемовин. Я хочу подякувати тобі, Еммануелю, що у нас є така можливість, що наші команди зустрічаються 2 дні. Дякую тобі і дуже дякую американським колегам. Але головне – архітектура того, якою має бути безпека після цієї війни, фактично вже є. І це в силах партнерів дотиснути, щоб Росія прийшла до моменту закінчення війни. Україна ніколи не була перепоною для миру. Росія була джерелом, початком цієї війни, джерелом агресії. І в такій формулі зрозуміло, хто має зробити кроки ключові. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає нам, хто допомагає все-таки зробити все, щоб був мир. Кожен розуміє, що агресор повинен зупинитись, щоб мир запрацював. І всі інструменти для цього працюють. Від наших діпстрайків, санкцій і дипломатія, яка так важлива. І дуже важливо, що сьогодні говорили також про нашу протиповітряну оборону. І це питання підіймали інші лідери коаліції охочих. Це для нас щоденне завдання, це правда. Україна потребує ракет для ППО, постійне постачання, оскільки російські удари, на жаль, незважаючи на дипломатію, але удари не припиняються. Росія не вкладається в дипломатію на 100%, поки що. Але не вкладається тільки тому, що розраховує на удару по нашій енергетиці, по нашій інфраструктурі, по мирним містам і селам. Тому кожна наша зустріч, зокрема і про ППО. І в Мар-а-Лаго ми про це говорили з президентом Трампом. Я дуже дякую йому за розуміння і за підтримку. І тут, в Парижі, ми також піднімаємо питання ППО. Чим сильніший наш захист, тим сильніше, зрештою, буде і дипломатія. Дякуємо всім, хто готовий швидко допомагати. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this very day of 1414 of the war. What a tongue twister right there. But it is time for us, folks, to move on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is that going to be one hell of a segment. Because so far, over the course of our entire news segment, which has been about 2 hours and 30 minutes, we have had 126,000 people watch this show. Holy moly. And I gotta say that we've also had a lot of people join this channel over the course of the day. We have had a whopping 600 people subscribe to the channel over the course of the day. Holy moly. That's a lot of people. And we thank y'all for joining us, and we hope that y'all continue to stay. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't. It makes us happy. It makes us smile. Don't you want to see a little enforcer smile? Come on, folks. Hit that subscribe button. Or you can hit the dislike button. Like, you can do that too. But anyways, with that, it is time
Don't do it.
Well, I mean, like, honestly, we can't stop them, you know? Like, hitting the like button would be nice, but... You know, if you got to hit the dislike button, you got to. I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret.
You see, it was that foolish crowd that they took that thing away from me, that dislike button. They said, sir, don't press that dislike button. I'm entitled to a like. You better press that like, I tell you, sir. That like button, they got to like that like button. Don't you just like a thumb up instead of a down? Who puts the thumb down? Losers.
I will let y'all in on a little secret. YouTube doesn't discern the difference between likes and dislikes. They just care that you clicked one or the other. So it doesn't even matter to our haters if you hit the dislike
Well,
button.
we would rather have thumbs up. We don't want them pressing the thumbs down.
But I mean, like, but technically though, like, thumbs up are great and we would love to have thumbs up. But what's interesting though is that YouTube actually doesn't discern the difference. They just discern that you clicked one or the other at all, and that's it. But still, hit the like button because we like to see that rare instead. That makes us happy, and that lets us know that y'all are happy with the kind of show that we're running. But still, with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can, because there's no better show in the entirety of YouTube except for this one. People call us up from all around going, sir, what a great show you run. It is truly an unbelievable show. The people travel from miles around to come here and watch this show. And that's why tomorrow, folks, we're going to be announcing that the Enforcer channel is going to start running the Department of the Treasury. It's going to be great. We're going to put Enforcer Matt in charge of all the money. It's personally going to go into his pocket and no one else's.
No, absolutely not.
Matthew had a little bit of a crash out right there, but that's okay. That's okay, because some people in the fake news, they say that people getting direct handling of money in the government is very questionable, and honestly, I gotta say, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with putting the money in my pocket before I give it somewhere else?
Excuse me, if you'll let me speak, come on, man. You gotta remember that the money is called allocated. You have to make sure that it goes to the right place. Allocate the money. They said, put it where it belongs, and stuff like that. You don't want to just throw money out there like it's making it rain. It's not good to make it rain like that. We want water rain. You know, they say about water, it's funny about water. It's something that your liver loves. It's a little bit of water. It's good for your health.
Water, it's good for your health. That's why I have water injected into my veins every day. Don't take that advice literally, but that's why I do it, because it's very healthy. Everyone says water is good for you. Honestly, I drink Diet Dr. Coke. I've never seen a thin person drink Diet Dr. Coke. And then there was this guy the other day. I was walking down the street, and he went, and I went, what is up with that guy? He looks a little odd, a little weird. But beyond that, I have to leave you all back to the hands of the fake news enforcer, because I have to get back to giving Marco Rubio his 9th job, because Hispanic people in this country are very underprivileged, as some of the people in the woke media say, because Marco's got 8 jobs and he's still hardly putting food on the table for his family, or as wicked George Bush said, putting food on the family. So I'm going to give it back to the enforcer, and we're going to get right back into the question. So what do you got, enforcer? What do you got? Thank you so much, and we're going to get back on into the question segment.
Now he's extra crazy. This is actually going on there else. He's having a conversation with himself. We're going downhill.
Man, I had to find out how to transition out of that. I was trying to do it differently.
Don't ever do that again. He's sounding crazy as hell doing that. Don't ever talk to yourself like that again on the stream.
Okay, well, I mean, we could just read one of the tweets from today, we could level it out. Anyways, with that, we are on into the questions. What do we got right now? What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so after we had that momentary lapse of sanity there, I'll be honest, the impressions, we always do impressions. I've never heard the enforcer talk to himself on the air before. That's a new one here on the air. But anyway,
some people have been saying I'm losing my mind. I'm losing it. But go ahead.
Anyways, with that, folks, we're now moving into our super chat questions proper. It's time to get our super chats, our live chat questions, and our Morse code decoders of the stream. And first off, we have a massive $200 support from Racer Jake. And thank you very much, Racer Jake, for that massive support right there. That's extremely generous, and we do appreciate that. He said, I just want to give a big thank you to you guys. And I can't tell you how much you guys are appreciated and how much you do for the world every day, giving honest feedback. And stay strong and keep doing what you're doing. And the honesty from you both is beautiful. And thank you very much, Racer Jake, for the kind words, by the way. I'll be real here for a second. We get a lot of hatred from every angle because we're doing something that a lot of people do not do, which is sort of go down the middle. I know some people say, oh, they're like clearly this side or another. We try to look at things as objectively as possible. And we can't help that we piss off, extremists on either side. Like, it's going to happen. You can't please everybody. And we're not even trying to please everybody. We're simply trying to call it how it is. And if people want to hear that, then great. But, if people don't want to hear it, they don't have to watch. That's the end of the story there. So, when we're doing stuff like threatening Greenland with invasion, we're going to say that sounds pretty ridiculous. We're not going to shy away from it because someone out there believes that that's a good idea. That sounds crazy. It is crazy. So we're going to call it crazy. So we get a lot of hell for approaching it at that direction. But, it is what it is. But thank you, Racer Jake, and also everybody else in our live chat, by the way, for always sticking with us through thick and thin like that, because there's a lot of crazies out there today, and I'm not just saying that to say it. There's a lot of crazies that drink the Kool-Aid, and it's wild to see it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to say a huge thanks to you, Racer Jake, for the humongous support. And hate is nothing new when it comes to this channel, because in the last administration, we were called MAGA Nazis because we would criticize that administration for bad decisions they made. The current administration makes... Well, the last administration, I'm just going to be straight up. This isn't even political. This is just the truth of it. The last administration would make bad decisions when they made a decision, and generally they would make no decisions most of the time. It's really hard to criticize something that a decision is not even being made on, but when decisions were being made, we would criticize them because they weren't always the greatest. And then people would call us MAGA Nazis because they were liberals and they didn't want to hear that their guy, the god of the liberals at the time, was doing badly. So now the Republicans are in charge, and now their god of the Republican Party is the one making all the calls. So then we get called snowflake liberals or something like that because we sit here and say this guy's foreign policy is bad. Because back back in the day, folks, there's entire hit piece videos out there from like 2 and 3 years ago that the hot dog man made on us, where he was talking about we were basically like hard right MAGA because we were criticizing Biden, and then under the current administration, then people want to say that we're snowflake liberals because we're criticizing this guy, and it just goes either way. And the honest truth is that at this point, one thing I will say is that it gets infuriating to watch, like, it's infuriating to watch the horde that follows both sides just do like 180s mentally on everything, like, like all the time, and you can just watch them do that in real time if you take a step back and watch it. And it's like, that is so stupid, because earlier last year, the current administration came in, and we're just speaking about the foreign policy stuff. We're going to cut down the spending in the government because we're overspending and we're about to go into huge debt nationally in default. So now we're going to up the military budget by $500 billion, which is certainly not cutting down government spending at all. So that's, a complete 180. And now increased military spending is good. When the last administration was increasing the military spending year over year, which we've been doing for decades, it was a terrible thing, and they were trying to bankrupt the country because they hate America. Now the current president can up it by $500 billion, which has never been heard of, except for some time like World War II and a spending equivalent. And then now they do all of 180, and they go, oh, now this is the greatest thing on the planet. We have to increase our military spending. Nobody in the world ever thought about the U.S. annexing Greenland before this guy became the president. Now there's a whole group in the country that just does a 180 on, he's the peace president and there should be no wars at all, yada yada, blah blah blah. Now the new year started, and now we need to invade Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, and also annex Greenland, because now wars are great. Last year, that group said, terrible, wars are terrible. All these people, these stupid idiots like us who were supporting the war in Ukraine, y'all are absolutely stupid idiots because wars are bad no matter what, and no war should ever be fought. And then this year, wars are fine, except for Ukraine for some reason. Ukraine's still wrong to them, but every other war in the world can be justified, even against their allies. And watching that kind of stupidity in real time, which happened in the last administration, but I'll have to say, not to this degree, like this is a special sort of a degree that we're dealing with right now, it is very infuriating. That part gets me aggravated. But the part about people coming in here and saying, we don't know what we're talking about and whatnot, that doesn't really get me too much at all, because I'm like, okay, so I'm assuming, and I'm assuming this, usually whenever I see someone say that, they don't have a degree on the subject, they hardly research it. If they've read about it, they probably read something stupid, like the Book of Esoteric Knowledge or something like that, and maybe they read like a Facebook headline or a TikTok headline that probably wasn't even hardly true, and then they based their entire opinion on analysis off of that, and then I'm like, they probably don't even know what they're talking about.
But do you really even need an education to know that we shouldn't be invading an allies country? I mean, you don't need any education for that. You can literally be dumb as a brick. Well, I say that, but in theory, you can be dumb as a brick and know you shouldn't invade an allies country. Like, I mean, it's common sense. I mean, it's literally a basic concept. If you're an ally, you don't invade their territory. Like, it's otherwise they're not an ally if you're invading their territory. I mean, it's insane. I mean, this coincides with like domestic political issues, folks. I'm sorry to say that. If it pisses some people off, I'm sorry. It coincides with trying to distract from certain things, and it doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense at all what's happening right now with this whole situation, especially with Greenland. The South America situation, there may be an argument to be made for invading some of those countries, but I don't necessarily just support wildly invading countries. That seems a little bit reckless. But all of a sudden, like you said, it was all about peace, 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 stop the wars, no more world police. And now all of a sudden, out of the blue, we're just invading people, attacking people, threatening to take Greenland. And it seems to coincide with some certain political events happening domestically here in the United States. It's awful.
It's absolutely stupid. And the thing is, folks, is that the prior administration was quite inept. But they weren't inept to this degree to where it was this prevalent bad decisions and criticisms that would have to arise so often. There were plenty of bad things that the last administration did, like the trickle of funds to Ukraine, where it was like basically like drip feeding them. And then there was the Chinese balloon incident. And then there was also the kind of like waffling half-assing that we did against the Houthis in Iran, which I wasn't really a big fan of. And basically this administration continued that on literally to the letter. And then there was the non-committal to Taiwan, basically, in the last administration as well. That was really annoying to me. So basically not doing well on any front. And then we were saying that back then when that guy was still president in his last year, we were like, it's not really looking that good on any front. We don't really know how it could get worse from here. Then the current guy comes in, and then it did get worse somehow, which I don't even know how. And we just sit there and watch it, and I'm like, how the hell is it this bad off? And then people want to, like, people sit there and put political affiliation above everything in this country. So back when we were saying that the last president, which is Biden, wasn't really doing that good of a job, and a lot of American strategic interest, a lot of people wanted to call us MAGA and Republicans and stuff because we were looking out for America's interest and not following a political party blindly and acting like everything they did was great. Now the current administration comes in, and they're doing even worse than the last administration in protecting American interest. And we say it again with absolutely no political bias, because we also criticized the last administration whenever we saw an issue that arose, and that was quite common. And then people want to say that now we're some sort of a bleeding heart liberal because we go our way to actually argue what's in the national interests and what's in the interest of the citizenry at large, no matter who you are. And then people want to tell us, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Clearly, getting rid of NATO is great because the Europeans are worms and they're useless. And what's so stupid about that is that those statements, folks, usually come from people who hardly look beyond their noses. Like in most other ways, that's the kind of people who are making those statements, if they are making them at all, which most people don't, because anyone could tell you that the United States is the major power of the globe because we have military bases everywhere around the globe, and we trade with a whole bunch of wealthy nations around the globe. Anyone who has any sense would know that. But then some guy who, you know, just lives out in somewhere, who knows where, and he hardly pays attention to shit. Then some guy tells him, oh, NATO's useless, they're basically like worms. And then someone goes, NATO's useless, they're basically like worms. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, and I gotta say, like, there's a lot of college-educated people that are pretty unwise and unintelligent, and there's a lot of people who are not college-educated that are very unwise and unintelligent on certain topics. I think, folks, like, I'm not saying that people need to get into gatekeeping or anything anymore, but I think it needs to be made a little bit more clear in the future for folks who may not be the sharpest tool in the shed. If they clearly look like they're just like a blind follower of either group, I think they need to be told to just sit back and take it easy and like sip on like a you know, a fruit punch or something like that, and just let everyone else decide the stuff. Because these people getting involved in things these days on the left and the right is just turning the whole entire situation into a cesspit that has no sense to it, no form, and no real function that benefits anyone, rather than a whole bunch of people screaming in a room for something, and half of them don't even know why in the world the good thing's good and the bad thing's bad, or why they're supporting the bad thing and saying it's good, or vice versa. And it's just
because politics has pervaded everything now, and it's gotten to the point where every single action you take, even in foreign policy, is highly political domestically. Like, it used to be, it's always been like that to a degree, but it's gotten much more increased and sharply polarized, even with foreign policy. So, for example, like the Ukraine situation, I mean, it's obviously in the U.S. interest to make sure that Russia does not take over Ukraine, because that puts Russia right on NATO's border at that point. So it's obviously in the U.S. interest to keep Russia from taking Ukraine. But because it's become so political, now one party wants to say, oh, well, that's the Europeans, that's their problem. And the other one wants to say, oh, we're all for Ukraine. But I'll say this. The last president, the last one we had, he prolonged the Ukraine war because he would not send the aid that they needed. He kept slow walking the aid to Ukraine, so they didn't get the big burst that they needed to properly defend. So they ended up prolonging the war that way, even though they said that they were supporting Ukraine. The current one isn't even sure if he wants to support it, and now he's making the Europeans foot the entire bill for Ukraine's defense, even though it's still in the U.S. interest as well to make sure Ukraine wins. So it's not unique to one. I know the current one's in office now, so everybody's like, you know, it's all his fault. The last one did stupid stuff in foreign policy because they were also trying to follow domestic politics way too closely in every decision they make. And the current one's doing the same thing, but to an even worse degree. It seems to be getting progressively worse as we're electing new people. They need to back off of that.
Yeah, they really do. And I would have to say, folks, that the public's got to understand these sort of neurotic individuals are not fit for leadership in any way. The last guy or the current guy. I mean, this is the bottom of the barrel. Like I say that, and then someone will get elected in the next, like 3 years from now, they're going to get elected, and then they're going to make these two look fairly tame as well. But I'm saying that because it's getting exhausting, folks, to watch the most incompetent candidate from one side go up against the most incompetent candidate from the other. And it's not because that's the way the system or the institution's doing it. That's what the people are voting for, because they go through an entire primary process in this country to pick the candidates for the Democrats and the Republicans, and we end up with the worst options of the two. I mean, like, I'm just going to be frank. The 2024 election was basically a wash, because I'll be straight up with y'all. Both of those options were not that good. And it was like, damn, you got to pick in between one fool or the other. Which one are we going to pick, and which way are we basically going to spit roast the country for the next 4 years? It's like, which way do we want it? Because neither one of them have the competency to actually go about this properly. Like, the current guy acts like everyone's
the sensible people can't get elected anymore. That's the problem, though. Okay, could you imagine? Go back and grab any like prior generation of president that we've had. Like, for example, go back and grab Eisenhower. Do you think if you put Eisenhower, who in my opinion was a pretty solid president, he obviously had his flaws, like everybody's got their flaws and they make bad decisions from time to time. But if you took Eisenhower and put him up against the current president in an election, the current president would wipe the floor over Eisenhower, because Eisenhower would be considered in modern society to be too weak. He wouldn't have enough one-liners and zingers to go up against the guy who we currently have as president. He wouldn't win the election. But yet, obviously, in my opinion, this isn't, I hope this isn't like offending anybody, but this is my opinion. The Eisenhower is much more qualified to be the president than the current guy by a long shot, but he would lose in the current environment.
Oh, I'd say, I'll be honest with y'all, any president from history, I'd even say at this point, like, Warren G. Harding's more competent than the current president and the last president before this guy that we've had. Just being completely straight up. I've never, like, this level of ineptitude in administration has almost never been seen in this country's history. What we've seen over the past about 5 years at this point. And I mean, hell, like it's just insane to see it and then go, this is the way it's going. And then instead of people going, this doesn't look good, and we really need to start changing the way we analyze the candidates we're even trying to elect, instead people go, no, we need to go even further down the rabbit hole on both ends. We need to pick even stupider people. And I don't even know how in the world that's the end logic that people are coming up with in this country, because nowadays you see people who get elected that have no long-term thinking skills. They have no larger big picture analyzation abilities. They don't listen to advisors, or if they do listen to advisors, they forget what they say basically instantly, and then they just pick something at random. It's just absolutely stupid. There is a way out of this, folks, before people go, the country's doomed. There's a way out of this, and you can turn it around. But you can't turn around with the kind of picks that we're getting these days. Because as you all know, we're already starting to hear about who's going to try and run in 2028. And I got to be entirely honest with y'all, with what a lot of people are saying they want to run on the left and the right, I'm like, that's about to be another damn wash. A third go around at this point. It's like, it's going to be another wash, because we're going to let's go pick these people who clearly don't really have any sense in their brains, and let's go and put them up against each other, so that way everyone can go, all right, which idiot are we going to pick? It's like, can we get competent options? Like, the competent options, folks, they don't make for great television. They don't sound interesting. They don't have stupid little zingers and one-liners and all that sort of business. They're very business-oriented, and they sound very boring. But to be entirely honest with y'all, I would rather like the leadership and administration and governance to be boring more so than I'd rather it to be exciting and a train wreck. Because the train wreck affects everyone, no matter which side they're from, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. And it's just getting really annoying to keep seeing this repeating over and over, and people saying it was better if they're even worse of an idiot.
Yeah, I just don't think it's as much as a people problem as it is a systemic problem. I'm not saying, and people are going to interpret that to mean I hate democracy. Obviously, democracy has worked very well for the United States, so we should keep it, obviously. We shouldn't be, going communist doesn't work. So, I mean, what are people suggesting other than democracy? So we got to keep democracy, but it's a systemic problem, because now in order to get in a primary or win an election, you have to have a ton of money, or you have to get mega donors to donate to your campaign to even get in the running. And that creates a problem, because then instead of the people truly picking the people, it creates the illusion of choice, like people are picking these people that were voting in the office, and it's not the people picking them, it's the people with mega bucks that are picking them, that are funding these PACs and super PACs. So honestly, if they took the money out of the elections, where you didn't have to have 500 million or something to win an election, then you would probably have better choice of candidates, because at that point you wouldn't have to have people with huge major bankrolls that are running for office, because those people are not always always the best picks. The people that are getting the big bucks, who do you think's giving them the big bucks? The people whose interests are being represented, which are not the average person. It's the people that are billionaires. I don't hate billionaires, but I mean, that's just the way it is. Those are the people that have money, and those are the people who donate to these campaigns. They have the money to toss around to do it. So they're looking out for their interest, not necessarily the interest of the people. And that's a huge problem. It should be the people picking those people, not the people with huge bucks.
And also on top of that, another thing is that some people are like, well, one party's bad over the other. No, they're not. They don't even have a moral compass. They don't even follow a baseline of thinking anymore. Like, the current party has basically gone from being hyper-capitalist to almost state-run industry, back to hyper-capitalist, and then almost into a communistic form of an economic system by talking about basic universal income and basically just having everyone at the same level, which would be something along the lines of a socialist or communist economic system. You know, it's like there isn't even a baseline there, and then whatever they bring up, depending on the day, their supporters just actively support whatever it is. And that's not just for this party, that's for the last one. Like inflation was happening in 2024. And we brought it up on air. We were like, inflation's happening, things are getting more expensive. And people who were Democrat, they just didn't want to say that. No, the economy's never been better, it's great, you're lying. And then the current president comes in, and the inflation is still ongoing, you know, inside the country domestically. And then we say it again, man, you know, things are getting more expensive. And now it's the Republicans going, no, it's not. You're lying. It's fine. It's great. Although you can literally go to the store every 2 weeks when we go on our shopping runs, you can literally see the prices rising week over week. You know, it's like I don't know how in the world people live in fantasy land rather than just looking at something for what it is. Like, politics these days basically demands that you throw reality out of the window and you basically live in a fantasy land. So if the guy you don't like is in charge, so, you know, say whoever, a Republican or a Democrat. So if you're a Democrat, it'll be a Republican, and if you're a Republican, it's a Democrat. The America is literally collapsing. It just couldn't be worse. It's the end of the country. It's over. And then once your guy wins, literally once the guy takes office, everything just magically becomes better overnight. Like, the gas is the cheapest it's ever been. The groceries are the cheapest. The economy is the greatest. The country is truly respected, although it's the same situation it was in the last administration. But for some reason, everything becomes peaches and rainbows overnight when literally nothing has changed and things are still as bad as they were and are still on the track to get even worse like they were before, and nobody's fixing them. And it's just crazy to watch that go down and just see that there is basically not really, like there is a lot of people who do think freely. A lot of y'all are watching the channel right now and can just see things for what they are and basically say that nothing's really going good and things need to improve no matter who's in charge. But there's a lot of people out there who literally watch the world through their rose-tinted glasses of whatever affiliation they pick. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Also, before you move on, I was going to make one more point here. I see people saying in the chat, well, you know, all the politicians are basically crooks. Well, it's like, do you know why they're crooks? I mean, the people that are getting chosen, I mean, for example, look at it from this example here. If you want to win an election, what do you have to do? You have to be very, very fluid and flexible with your own morals and your own beliefs. You can't have like concrete set beliefs that you truly believe in, or otherwise you're not going to get donations because your beliefs are not going to match up with the beliefs of the people giving you big bucks. So naturally, do you think a person that's willing to flex their beliefs like that on a dime like that is going to be a good person? Probably not. There's someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to get power and get money, and that's not who you want getting in the office. But if you took money out of politics, though, that wouldn't be that big of a problem. So that's a huge deal there. Honestly, the money in politics is a huge problem. It used to be considered wrong to do that. It used to be considered very wrong, but now for some reason it's totally normalized. In fact, they brag about how much money they get from billionaires. They say, look how much I got here. This candidate raised 500 million. Oh, they raised 700 million. It's like, should we not be having a problem with that they're getting so much money from people whose interests are very, very small percentage of the population, doesn't represent the majority of people? People should be saying, instead of, oh, wow, they raised 700 billion, they should be saying, wait a minute, they raised 700 billion. Like, why? It's like, and also, I mean, are they basically bought and sold at that point? I mean, obviously there were strings attached to that money. It's not like it's free. They have a reason. Why do you think they're giving them 700 billion? There's a reason. And we're seeing that today, what the reason is.
And on top of that, the other reason, if you're talking about in the chat systemic corruption like insider trading and whatnot, that's because none of the voters in those districts hold their people accountable. Everyone whines and bitches and moans about how the government's so corrupt. You literally have the ability to get rid of these people. You don't even have to pass a law to stop insider trading. If you believe that your guy, your representative or Congress member of any variety is conducting an insider trading or something that you find questionable, you have the ability to do one of the following. One, when the next election comes around and the primaries come around for that district, you can put in your vote in the same party for a different candidate that's not them and basically oust them out of their own seat at that point and then elect the new guy in to get rid of the crook. Or you can just go vote for the whole other party just to spite their ass and get them out and then vote that person out afterwards for someone else. You can do one of those two options. The voters literally have the ability to hold these people accountable, but instead everyone's like a lemming on running to a cliff, and they go, oh, well, I can't sit there and hold my guy accountable because then that seat might be lost. Although if everyone thought this way, it wouldn't be. It's just that we would replace them with someone who isn't an open crook. And then the whole system keeps going on that way. Like, it's crazy how people act like they're not in control in this country when people are really in control. Like, if people actually just thought with their heads and went, I don't really care whether this guy is a Republican or a Democrat or not, I think the guy's a crook, and it looks like he's involved in crookery, so I'm going to go either vote for the other person in the other party, or when the primary comes around, I'm going to vote for another candidate in this very same party that's not them and screw them over, because I'm not going to have a crook run in my district. If people thought like that, there would not be a lot of corruption in this country. But what's crazy is that people will go, I'm voting for him because he's done us well, when he might have even voted for anything that's in your benefit or interest the entire time he's been in an office. But anyways.
and also, real quick, we got to make this one the last one, though, because we got to move on after this. But what's crazy to me, like, for example, you have Party A and Party B. You have Party A senator out here coming into office, into the Senate, with like a $500,000 net worth. And by the time they leave office, they have like a $60 million net worth as a senator. Then in Party B, you have someone come in with like let's say $100,000 net worth, and they come out with a $20 million net worth by the time they're done with the office. But yet, even though it's the same thing, it is obviously not. Who the hell gets $20 million as a senator? I mean, there's clearly something running amok there. You don't get rich being a senator. It's supposed to be a position of public trust. It's not supposed to be a get-rich-quick scheme. But yet, at the same time, people from Party A and B will pretend like their guy who did that is okay by doing it, but yet the other party's evil. It's like they're both doing it. It's like they're playing you for a fool because they're both doing the same thing. They're both behind closed doors shaking hands like, oh, we really fleeced them good, but yet my side believes you're bad, and my side believes you're bad too. It's like, come on, man. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like the cognitive dissonance that goes into place, like just absolutely shutting off into like this cult. It's wild. It happens on both sides, not just one. It's not everybody, by the way, but there is like extreme on each side that just wants to completely ignore common sense all the way around.
Yeah, and also on top of that, another thing I don't think a lot of people get, just to, like, we keep adding stuff to this, and we're like, the last thing, and then, but, someone said voting doesn't work, it's all rigged. There is no such thing as a rigged vote in this country. Voting is what it is. What rigs it is the immovability of the people who are voting. And you can see that literally in person. You can be like, but this guy has done this and that. Like, this guy hasn't voted for anything in our interest. In fact, he's just basically sat up there and racked up as much money as he can. Well, I'm voting for him because I ain't going to have them stupid insert liberals or Republicans taking over the seat of this district. It's like, who cares? It's like, I would rather not have a crook in the office. I don't care who in the world replaces them. I just don't want to have a crook, at least this one. And then if the next person's a crook, we'll vote them out too. It's like, that's fine. We'll keep voting out people and replacing them until we get what we want. That's what rigs the system in this country, is that people just keep voting blue or red every single term and for the same person. And then one more thing, is that someone said, let's see.
Yeah, we're one more thing in this thing till the end. We got like 35 super chats to go.
Honestly, we'll just be moving on. Hell. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our next super chat here goes to Racer Jake once again, and he puts in a very generous $202 super chat, and a huge shout out to you, Racer Jake, for that massive support right there. And also, it took us a minute to get to that, by the way. We kept doing one more thing, and we were going all the way. But a huge shout out to you, Racer Jake, for the second absolutely massive support of the night. He said, you guys are 100% right, and I feel very much that you have two choices in life, and that's love or fear, and any effort that supports that and human agency is fantastic, and everyone's going to have a different opinion on things, but what's super important is that we work together and be honest.
I definitely agree with that. I wish that people would work together. You don't see that a lot these days either in folks. But everyone wants to just stonewall everything instead of compromise or just move on. And it's really crazy. Like another thing, another thing adding on, since we have another super chat to address here. One other thing that I had to say, folks, this is something that hit me today. While I was making the news, I was listening to clips of Seinfeld, and you know, Matthew, there was a Seinfeld clip where Jerry Seinfeld and Elaine went to I forgot the guy's name, but it was like so-and-so's restaurant or something like that. And remember, folks, Seinfeld was made about 30 years ago in the middle of the 90s. And they were talking about a very big domestic political issue in this country, which is the right to life or not for an unborn infant. You know, a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about. And and it hit me while I was listening. I was like, that was 30 years ago. And the literal argument that they had in that episode was the same one people have today. It's like, we don't address any real issue in this country, like infrastructure and stuff like that, where we actually have to address it and fix it. We address issues that everyone is on complete polar opposites of, and have stonewalled the issue on both sides for 30 years, and we've basically seen hardly any change. It's like, maybe at this point, since society is not in consensus on this, maybe everyone just needs to understand, maybe we'll walk away from that and visit it later when everyone has a consensus one way or the other, and we'll go focus on more important things that we always are having to tend to right now, which there's a lot of other things that are more important. There's a lot of domestic political topics like that. But I do thank you massively for support, and I would also say that on topics like that, I think stonewalling is going to be inevitable on topics like that. But we could still see that there would be some sort of compromise on other important topics like infrastructure, trade, and foreign policy, where there are imperative things that must be done for our country. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, one more thing, one more thing. Honestly, I would much rather just tell it how it is. And if it doesn't go well, telling it how it is and being being straight up about something, then it just is the way it is. Like, for example, if we say something on this show and it goes sideways and people don't like it, but yet I feel like it's the honest truth. I mean, it just is what it is. Like, we used to sort of like try to like corner around it a little bit, so that way we weren't really stepping on too many toes and things like that. But over time, though, you start realizing you're going to piss people off no matter what you say at some point. So if you're going to piss people off, why not just tell it how it is, instead of trying to bend and curve and everything else, trying to like navigate all these different opinions, because you're never going to please everybody. That's one thing you start realizing really quick. That's not going to happen. Also, I mean, what's the objective behind that? Trying to make everybody happy. It's like, what's the point? You're going to bend the truth to make some people feel good about it, and you're still going to get hated by the other people anyway. So just tell it how it is. But moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Rick Galentian, who put in a $30 support. And thank you very much, Rick, for that support as well. He said, it seems like the entire world is going to hell in a handbag.
In a
handbag.
In a handbag? Oh, that's rather luxurious. I thought it was a handbasket, but a handbag, that's actually an upgrade. And I gotta say, huge thanks to you so much for your support and helping this channel to keep running. I would generally not disagree with that. It's definitely not getting better every year. So, there is that going for it. So I do have to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a 30. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that support. And Marion said, members of your chat believe the untruths of the situation today that we saw in Minnesota. Shame on them. Stay safe. And please do not read online. I already read it. I already read the thing. All I can say is that's tragic. What happened today, all joking aside and being serious for a second, it's tragic. I'm going to leave it up to everybody's opinion about that, but I think it's very tragic. But Enforcer, what say you?
It was certainly a tragedy and a very sad and unfortunate thing to see. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Cryosog, who put in a 20 and said, hopefully we finally realize the Ruskies are our enemies, and please, for everything's sake, don't talk about Greenland, and the concept makes no sense.
I'll be straight up. I thank you so much for the support, but I'm going to be honest, folks. The no politics rule, some people don't get this. It's open to our interpretation running the show, what falls within the rule and doesn't. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not straying away from any topic at this point, folks, that I think is against American and Western interest in general. If it seems to be that, we're going to just say it outright, whether people are angry about that or not, because it's basically impossible these days to try and appease everyone and not bring up topics because it gopher holes us so badly we really can't bring up much of anything. And a lot of stuff going on these days, which is clearly bad takes and bad calls, or bad calls, and for some reason it's now contentious because this guy brought up. If for example, like, here's the crazy thing, folks. I just got to say this is the truth of it. If the last president was the one who seized that Russian tanker today near the Faroe Islands, everyone who is right now saying that that was a good call and we ought to be obliterating and bombing everyone around the world, they would have said that that guy was trying to create World War III and kill everyone in America because he hates them all. That's what they would have been saying. Now it's a great thing. Like we can't appease everyone. Like, that's the truth of it, because that's how that would have gone back then. It goes this way nowadays. You know, it's just the same thing over and over. So we're going to just say whatever, because, you know, there's people in the chat already going, oh, look at this guy. He's just a bleeding heart guy. It's like, kiss my ass. It's like, I don't really like, it's like, honestly, it's like, we'll say what we say, and if people don't like it, they don't like it, and they'll have to get a therapist and figure it out. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep running. But I definitely agree with you. It makes absolutely no sense, and it is a terribly bad call. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, we're going to speed up a little bit because we have about 30 left, and otherwise we're going to be on here until like 1 o'clock in the morning. But this one goes to DL Hemingway, who puts in the 20. And thank you very much, DL Hemingway, for that support as well. He said, what do you think of the privateer bill?
I would say that that's probably not going to do too well in practice, because the era of privateering is over. Like, there's no way to really see that happen in reality. No one has the funds to do it, at least in a modern form. But with that, a big thanks to you so much for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Measureman. And Measureman said, I'm watching the entire show. Let's see. He said something crazy there in the first part. I can't read it out in the air. But he said, that's probably not the most unhinged thing you've heard today, but it should be. And LSA.
Thank you so much for the support. And honestly, these days, we hear so much nothing. Some stuff is actually shocking, but most stuff is not shocking anymore. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to let's see, I'll just spell it out. MYLZAXTN, who put in a $20 support. And they said, Miles Austin, there he actually spelled it out for me in the super chat. But he said, has any nation previously served as a colony of one NATO member state, only to transition into a member of another NATO country, and everybody should continue to be protected under NATO?
I don't think that's ever happened, as a matter of fact, in the entirety of NATO history, and I don't think that it ever should happen. Greenland is Denmark's territory. We are up there by treaty already, so there's no point in changing that arrangement. It's quite a comfortable one for everyone involved. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from none other than Don, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, Don, but thank you very much for that $20 support. He said, thanks forecast the hard work, and Crown Prince called for all to be on the streets at 8 p.m. on Thursday and Friday.
And I got to say, thank you so much for support. And we actually heard about that as well, and it looks like there's going to be big things happening in Iran over these next 2 days. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Juke. And the Juke said, late to the party. And do you think the U.S. will do what they did in Venezuela to Iran, or simply launch air attacks?
I would say that they might try and do what they did in Iran, but they also might just stick with airstrikes possibly, because with the revolution on the ground, it may not even be necessary to try and force the guy out. He might actually have to fly himself out on his own, probably to Russia to live in exile. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to none other than Quattro, who put in a 20. Who said, does India stay in the axis of resistance, or do they orient back to the West?
They're generally still in the Axis powers in the BRICS economic group, or generally within what we would call the Axis military powers. I don't think they're going to be coming back anytime soon either. And honestly, at this point, I don't really think we should concern ourselves too much about that. That's a country that's long gone from us at this point. And we'll just have to figure out our strategic priorities in that area elsewhere and elsewhere, to put it that way. I was about to say both of those together. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Jack. And Jack said, would the USA really risk alienating the rest of the world? Okay, maybe not Argentina, but by forcefully taking over Greenland and LSA.
I don't know. I have a feeling that we probably would because this administration's actions so far have not really made any sense, and also have been incredibly hostile to our allies over the past year. So I would say it's not really out of the realm of possibility, and hopefully the Congress will step in and stop this from happening because this would be devastating if we follow through with this stupid idea. But with that, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Blind Man. And Blind Man said, hello, enforcers in LSA. And since I refuse to call it by its proposed name due to personal reasons, would it be better to build more BBGX Defiance class battleships, DDGX destroyers, or FFGX Constellation class frigates?
It would be better to build a larger number of smaller ships because all modern naval doctrine generally shows that large capital ships like the Defiant are basically sitting ducks to get obliterated in the modern day. The Moskva is a great example of that in the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and generally no large capital ship that is not an aircraft carrier has really ever survived the rigors of modern combat. Practically all of them have been destroyed, and the only time that any single one of them have not been destroyed was when we had complete naval supremacy, like in the Korean War or in the Gulf War, which in the Vietnam War, which the Iowa-class battleships were used in, but they basically had no adversaries, and an Iowa-class battleship, if I remember correctly, was almost obliterated in the middle of the Gulf War in 1991 because some anti-ship missiles fired by the Iraqis got within, I think, 1.5 miles of the ship, which at the speeds an anti-ship missile flies at, it was literally seconds to impact before it took out that battleship. So generally, I would say we need to go with something along the lines of a Constellation-class frigate, or we need to try and enlarge the Arleigh Burkes by just a little bit with the newer classes that we could produce, because the Arleigh Burke is a tried and true conventional hull-form design, and while the capacity of the ship is currently maxed out, elongating the hull or maybe making some sort of a modification like that would greatly enhance the abilities of the new Arleigh Burkes, and that would be probably the most efficient thing that we could do. So I hope that does address that the best we can, and a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chef Danny B. And Chef Danny puts in a 30. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And he said, good evening, enforcers. Chef Danny here. And I'm very proud to be an American, but also disappointed with some of the actions that we have done or may be going to do. And I hope we don't burn too many bridges. And thanks, gents, and LLT-LSA. Honestly, though, Danny, that's a good perspective to have right there. And hopefully all other Americans have that perspective, that just because bad decisions are being made right now doesn't mean that all hope is lost or that you should hate the country or something. America is much larger than the current president holds the office for 4 years, much larger than that. They're simply occupying the office, and they were elected by the people. So in theory, they're supposed to serve the people. But as some people find out, sometimes they don't do that, especially when they're on their last term that they can only serve, because you can only serve 2 terms in America. So, you know, that is what it is. Hopefully it's just 2 terms. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that, Danny B. I'm very disappointed in what we're seeing right now, but I'm always proud of the United States of America because the U.S. is more than just one guy in the White House. It's 360 million people, and a lot of those people are something to be proud of for sure. So a huge thanks to you so much for the support, to the official chef of the LSA for helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And also, before we move on, I actually saw someone say the Defiant is not a battleship. If anything, it's close to a Ticonderoga. The media just took that word and ran with it. You know, we have the tweet where he actually called it a battleship. He said it's a battleship. The president said that. It's not the media that did that. I don't like. I gotta say, like, I'm not gonna rant on this too long here, but I don't know what it is with folks like you. Like you hear something, like the guy says stuff that unadmittedly is absolutely stupid sounding, like that's a battleship. It's not, but he says it, so it is a battleship, and the military is classifying it as a battleship because he said that. So then people like you go, well, that sounds too stupid, so we're just going to act like he didn't say that, and then we're going to say that it's actually a cruiser. And if you literally look at it, if you pull it up, the president literally put out a tweet, we're commissioning the first battleship in modern history. We can literally go and source the tweet if we wanted to from our map. We literally have the tweet where he said that. We even have the briefing where he went and said that in person. He called it a battleship. So, you know, like people saying they're going, well, it's not. Well, he said it. So what is it then? Like, what were you saying? The president's wrong? You're saying he's lying? He's the one who commissioned the ship. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chris Feilbach, and he puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for the support as well. He said, Columbia bros, know you.
Oh, well, you know, maybe. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Deminoak, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Deminoak, for that support. He said, didn't JFK say USA will keep hands off Cuba?
Well, that was JFK, and usually the situation can change, but at the same time, though, like, it would be great to see Cuba taken, well, its communist government taken out, but at the same time, it's like, do we really want to go and start escalating global tensions over Cuba, which basically provides no strategic significance to anyone, not even ourselves? It doesn't even really pose a threat anymore. It's basically a poverty-stricken island in the middle of the Caribbean that can really do nothing to anyone. They can hardly do anything even on their own island. So, you know, I would say it'd be nice to see the Cuban government go, but I would say that that's something that's more so of a sideshow. Like, say if World War III did happen and we somehow didn't get obliterated in a nuclear Armageddon in the realm of doing that. After that war, maybe we could go down to Cuba and clear it out just to, you know, wrap up the World War with a nice little bow when we come out on the winning side. But beyond that, I just don't really see any reason of going down there and raising global tensions to deal with the Cubans right now. So I hope that does address it the best we can, at least in my opinion. A big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pericatorius, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Pericatorius, for that support. They said, just a heads up, the Hadrami elite forces are aligned with the STC and are both backed by the UAE. And the Saudis are backing the Yemen Republicans against the Houthis and the STC and HEF. It's a three-way civil war, just clarifying.
One second, let me check that.
That's a lot of dang groups to keep up with, by the way.
Let's see. Well, no, actually, everyone's calling the Southern Transitional Council Saudi-led, and as a matter of fact, the leader of the Southern Transitional Council was flying back tonight. I didn't cover that, from Riyadh after a meeting with the Crown Prince. So I'd like, a lot of people have been confused about that, and I've seen some people saying that they're UAE backed, but the STC is pushing against the Hadrami elites. The Hadrami elites are UAE backed, and it wouldn't make any sense for the STC to be on an offensive against the Hadrami, which we've been able to confirm for weeks now, if both of them are UAE backed. So generally, from what I know, it is the STC is Saudi backed, and the Hadrami elites don't even have the UAE because the UAE packed up shop and left last week. So I hope that does address it the best I can from what I know. And let's see here. I'm trying to see. Let's see here. Let me see if I can get this, folks. Let's see here. Oh, damn. I'm trying to see if I can get some information on this really quickly, folks. Let's see. State, let's see, also South, let's see, so, you know what, folks, I'm actually gonna have to do some more reading on that because that actually does look quite complicated. So, you actually might be right there from what I'm trying to quickly read from another source. I'm gonna have to read up on it even more and see if, I'm trying to simplify that too much and I'm overlooking something that you just brought up. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Georgia, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Georgia, for that support. They say, young'uns, you make me happy. Almost 4 years now. I'm glad to hear that, by the way. I mean, that means you must have been here since the beginning, actually, because I think we've only been on the air for about 4 years, I think.
Yeah, I would have to say, thank you so much for the support and enjoying the channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And also, Matthew, I don't think that saying a president can only serve 2 terms is political. If someone says that that is political, they're brain dead. Like, it's like
that guy. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I rarely ever do I let bots get under my skin. That guy right there, Henry, it just got under my skin really bad there for a second. That, just to say this, I wasn't going to give an on-air time, but since it's brought up now, I was kind of wanting to anyway, but I was withholding myself from doing it. Some clown just came in here and said, because I said on the air a second ago that hopefully this is the only term, the last term for a president, that's somehow political. A president can only serve 2 terms. That's in the law. So, I mean, how can something be political? It's literally in the law. I mean, if that's political, then we're screwed if that's political, because that's just literally written down in stone.
I believe that's the 25th Amendment, that specific, well, I believe that...
No, that's not the 25th, I don't think.
No,
that's
no,
about
the 25th, yeah, is about, but I think it's one around there, like the 24th Amendment or something along those lines. That would be about 2-term limits. That's absolutely crazy, folks. Look at this. This is triggering, folks. That we sit here and say that you ought to follow the Constitution of the Republic, and the 22nd Amendment, which thank you 1985 El Mondo, says that a president can only serve 10 years, but 2 terms, and 2 years as the vice president being ascended to the office of the presidency. That is really stupid. I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. It's really hard for people to say that they really look out for America's interest when they're willing to call you political for pointing out something that exists in the Constitution as codified constitutional law and saying that that's just what it is. I gotta say that's really hard. I mean, that's really hard not to make a lot of comments on that, because that's basically becoming un-American at that point. And that I would say that that's almost to the point of getting along the lines of becoming a traitor to the Republic, because if you don't follow the Constitution, which is basically what makes the United States, and what makes an American American, then you're not an American. That's just simply put.
It's the same people that claim to be Christians, and then they pray to a politician. It's the same type of stupidity behind it. They literally pray to a man, by the way. That's their God, by the way, to some people.
It's something
It's
else.
insanity. It's mental illness. It's beyond insanity. It's mental illness.
It is. But anyways, with that, we were on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Live Animal. And thank you very much, Live Animal, for that $15 support. They said the world is less split on geographical borders, but more on ideological borders, and countries are split in between. And finally, one or the other ideology will win, and it'll be a unipolar world.
Well, I wouldn't say one or the other will win ideologically, domestically, because if that was the case, then we wouldn't see the strife we see right now in America, and we've been seeing that for 250 years. But I do thank you so much for the support, and eventually someone will probably come out on top, but I don't think it'll ever be within our lifetimes. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have another 50 from Racer Jake. And thank you very much, Racer Jake, for the third massive super chat of the night. We do genuinely appreciate that. He said Eisenhower was an amazing president, and the foreign policy is not perfect, but how everything was handled with Iran and Venezuela, I think, was pretty incredible. And that doesn't go to one person at all. And also, run for governor of Utah. LOL, I'd vote for you guys. Now, honestly, that's a pretty cool idea right there. I think in Utah, though, like I'm being realistic here, I think you kind of have to be involved in the Mormon church to kind of get elected here. I may be mistaken, but that's kind of like the feel I get for it. It seems like you have to sort of be in that group to get into politics here. I may be mistaken, but that's just my outside perspective of it. So I'm not sure how viable that would be, but I thank you for the vote of confidence, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you massively as well, Racer Jake, for the vote of confidence. And I got to say thank you so much for the support and the incredibly kind words and helping this channel to keep running. I would say that Eisenhower was pretty damn good, I would say as well. But I'll be entirely honest, there wasn't really a lot of presidents that were incredibly bad back then. I mean, you can actually just like name them offhand. Like, for example, Warren G. Harding, Herbert Hoover. Let's see, what would be another one? I mean, that was basically it, honestly, that I could think of off the top of my head would be Warren G. Harding and Herbert Hoover. Basically, everyone else, they were generally not that bad at all, no matter what political party they were from. I mean, they were pretty decent. But anyways, with that, I hope that I addressed it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Live Animal once again, who puts in the 15. And thank you very much, Live Animal, once again for that support. They said there's one political extreme in charge in EU at the time. Tomorrow will be diametrically opposite, and it's difficult to predict what will happen in NATO, and there's no right answer, unfortunately.
There is a right answer that NATO should remain intact and that the U.S. shouldn't be threatening to invade Greenland. That's why I'd say would be the correct answer out of everything. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Robert Krogan, who put in a 10. And Robert said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and too tired for anything witty, LOL.
Well, we still thank you for being here nonetheless and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to South Carolina Deer Girl, who put in a 10. And they said, Queen of Battle, follow me.
And thank you so much for the support. And hopefully some people will follow you. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Is it the Rangers that have like a similar motto to that? They're like the Rangers follow me or something like that. Is that the one I'm thinking about?
I think it's Rangers, we lead the way or something like that.
Rangers follow me. Let's see if that is it. Follow me. Follow me is a chant used by Scottish football club Rangers FC. That's not what I'm thinking about at all. Let's see. Whatever. I'll have to look
Yeah,
at it
it's
later, though. We're running low.
Rangers lead the way, or we lead the way is the motto of the Rangers. I literally told you, and they went, let me go find it. I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't
I was
count.
trying to find the one that said "Follow me." There's some unit out there. It might be the Army. I think they're like something follow me or something like that. It's like a similar slogan.
I think so. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cryosog once again, who puts in the 20. And he said, "What I meant was, forget Greenland, blockade Kaliningrad."
And I'd have to say that there's a possibility there in the future that might actually have to happen. But big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
It's the Army Infantry. That's the one. The primary motto for the Army Infantry is "Follow me." So that was what I was thinking about right there. So, SC Dear Girl, are you in the Army and are you infantry? I'd be curious to know. But with that, moving into our next one, this one goes to Space Fraggle, who said, "I love the intro."
And thank you so much for enjoying the intro, Space Fraggle. It took a lot of time and a lot of money to make that thing, and I'm glad to know that people really do enjoy it. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to YI, who puts in the 10. And he said, "LSA all the way."
And LSA all the way. That's like Santa Fe all the way. But still, big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Zephyr, who puts in the 10, who said, "Was an MH6 involved in the capture of the Russian tanker? And if so, would that indicate that the 160th is involved again? And bonus mention of the MH6 and AH6 coming to DHS world."
And yes, there was one involved, and the 160th SOAR was also involved in this operation. Apparently, they're spread pretty thin across most of the globe at this point. Some of them are in the Americas, some of them are in EUCOM, some of them we believe are even elsewhere than that, in the Middle East and CENTCOM. But I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Trog, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, "Long live the LSA. Thank you both for your work and my favorite news source."
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and thank you so much for enjoying our work and supporting it, so we can keep this thing running day in and day out. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to the Wolfman, and the Wolfman put in a 10. He said, "Russia can't even fight out of a wet paper bag, and they're threatening to torpedo U.S. vessels over a tanker that isn't theirs, and Putin's just blowing more hot air."
I generally agree. So, but there's probably a chance they might try and do something about it because the Russians can't look like they're getting punked, at least in their minds. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Mark Dixon, who put in a 10. And we appreciate you very much, Mark, for that support. And once again, there is no comment there, but we do appreciate that. And we also have a 10 from Robert Betancourt, who said, "USC 18, Section 202, which, let's see here. Sadly, I can't get into this one. This one does get political here. It gets into the whole situation with certain law enforcement. I can't get into this one, but thank you very much, Robert Betancourt, for that support. And we also have a 10 from Live Animal once again, who said, "The IRGC might activate sleeper cells."
They could. We don't know how many of them they actually have, but there is a possibility of that. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, we have a 10 from Beautiful Earth, who said, "Did you see the gunfire at that Utah church?" And we did, actually. We saw that. I was trying to get a quick update on that. Let's see here. Utah. Let's see here. Let's see if there's an update on that real quick. I think the suspect might be on the loose. Let's see here. They're not saying, but apparently 2 people were deceased and 8 people got shot. So I've heard some rumors. I hadn't been able to confirm it that maybe it was a gang-related shooting, but I'm not really sure about that. So we'll have to find out here. But definitely not a good situation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it was an incredibly unfortunate thing to hear about, but we did hear about it. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Kendall, who put in a 10. He said, "500 billion. Forget Greenland. Let's go to the moon."
I mean, honestly, like $500 billion increase over a 1-year period is absolutely insane. It's nuts. Like there's no way to even, like, there is literally no way to fiscally justify that. And I'm someone who's huge into military spending, and even I have to say that is absolutely insane. Like, that's nuts. Like, I could maybe say 100 billion or 150 billion increase, but that's even stretching it. But a $500 billion increase in a 1-year annual spending period, that's literally insane. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Sarah Bear, Rar, who put in a 10. And they said, new sub, but follower since around day 100, and Slav Ukraine. And if Iran is toppled and the theocracy ends, then do you believe it impacts Russia's war efforts in a meaningful way? And thanks, guys.
I would say that it probably won't impact Russia's war in much of any way, to be entirely honest. They don't really get a lot from the Iranians shipped to them any longer from what we know. But still, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Andres Forrester, who put in a 7 and said, escalation ladder theory would theoretically suggest a minimal escalation, and if anything is done at all, and Russia is busy with Ukraine too.
And I would agree with that. That's why we're saying they probably will try and react some way, and we'll have to see how. But still, a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to SC Dear Girl once again, who put in a 5 and said, home of the free because she of the brave. And I can't read the last part. I was about to read it by accident, but thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cryosog once again, who puts in 2 $5 super chats. They said, blockade Kaliningrad, don't take Greenland. And if we keep talking about Greenland, I'm going to have to advocate for the A-10. And also on top of that, other OSINT indicate the USN Lewis B. Puller might have also been involved and has a large flight deck for rotary aircraft.
Oh, that's very interesting. I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Seeker of the Way, who said, I'm brand new to this channel. What is the LSA? And thank you for streaming and researching and discussing to get to the truth. And thank you for being genuine and not political.
And thank you so much for the support. And I would have to say that the LSA stands for the Leaf Spring Army. It's a community of the channel. It has a flag and an anthem, and it supports American and Western interests, which generally we outline what is an American and Western interest here on the channel on the show. So with that, I hope that does thank you for massively for the support, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $5 support from Talos Auditor, who said, if you want Greenland, $1 billion per citizen. I'm sure they'd consider that.
Maybe. I mean, like, you know, it's not out of the question. But a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Jack Ray, who said, let's see here. He makes a comment about the Nobel Prize situation right there. A very interesting situation with that Nobel Prize right there. Apparently, it's a Nobel handout to some people, but it's supposed to be a prize. It's not supposed to be entitled to anybody. It's supposed to be chosen, independently, actually.
You know, for a group of people who hates participation trophies, they act like they're supposed to get trophies for participating. Like, you know, like the FIFA Peace Prize, the Nobel. It's like, you know, it's like maybe you ought to, like, you know, not really worry about the trophy because, you know, truth be told, folks, who gives a shit? Like, I don't really give a damn, like, if the guy gets it or not. So who gives a shit, really? I mean, like, if he gets it, whatever. And if he doesn't get it, who cares?
It's like, you know those like streamy awards. There's like a whole like awards thing for streamers and stuff like that. We've never been like we're like in the top category of streamers. We've never been contacted by them, like to my knowledge. Like we haven't been contacted. So you know it'd be like us saying those screwballs over there did not give me my award that I was owed that I was entitled to. It's like. I'm like, if they want to give us an award, great, but we're not entitled to the award. It's like, well, who the hell are we to say that we're entitled to an award? It's like, yes, we're up there in the top of the ranking, but if they don't want to give it to us, that's their call. It's their award. So who are we, as someone who's possibly going to be awarded that award, to say that we deserve it? That's crazy.
And truth is, we run a show that we're proud of anyways, so we don't even need an award to be happy with running the show. It's like, why the hell would like if they invited us and said you're a nominee to win a streamer award, I'd be like, that's cool. It wouldn't be my top priority though. Like it just wouldn't be. Like just like that's a real high honor. Thanks for like nominating us for that. But if we can make it, we can, and if we can't, we can't, because we might even be busy doing this. And I'd be rather more interested in doing my job, which is this, more so than going and getting a streamer award. So, you know, it's like, that's just how I think of it. You know, it's like, that's just the truth of it. It's like, and I really could give a shit about the whole Nobel thing. Like, and also I got to say this, folks, I'm not like, I'm not one for the whole participation trophy thing, like you're just there, so you get a trophy. Like, I feel like that completely defeats the purpose of getting an award. And also, at the same time, it's absolutely stupid to act like you are owed an award. Because at that point, you should never get the award because you're too entitled to even get it. Like, that's just the way I think about it. You know, and that's the way that all the people who support the president thought about it until he wanted the Nobel, and now participation trophies are all in vogue now. But I don't really give a damn. Like, they had to give the guy a made up trophy from FIFA. Like, I'm not even trying to get political here, but I mean, how fragile of an ego do you have that you have to go around everywhere and get participation trophies to feel like you're respected? We don't have to get anything from anybody to feel like we're respected or appreciated here on this show. We know that people enjoy the show. Y'all don't have to give us a medal or anything for it.
You know something. You know what's interesting? I think it was FIFA that gave an award. You remember they gave him that award that required like a key to operate it or something like that. And they were like, and also it has a key. And he was like, oh, wow. It's like he finally got an award. It was granted it was like a sidelined award, kind of like some. I don't know if they made that award up or what. I've never really heard of that award personally, but they gave it to him. He was like, just like, whatever. It's like, would the Nobel be the same way if you got it? It's like, would it just be another? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it's just the next thing after that. Norway hasn't come and kissed the ring. Now they need to send their prime minister. It's like the truth is, folks, is we know someone a lot like this, and it's a never-ending cycle with these types of people as far as their personality goes. Nothing's ever good enough, and it's just manipulating people and threatening them to feel power over them and then have them feed their ego, and it just goes in a circular cycle. This thing never ends. It never ends. It's basically a living hell, especially for the people who directly have to deal with someone like that, because you're always in a constant fear of getting absolutely screwed over by them if they have the power over you to do that. And you just have to keep sucking up to this person even when you're absolutely tired of them and you can't stand them anymore. And if you make that clear ever, then they're going to act like they have a right to destroy you because they told you, look, I'm getting tired of this crap and I'm getting tired of this endless cycle of this shit. That's just the truth of it. And like, I've got to be honest with y'all, after kind of seeing that, I'm like, that's really stupid. Like, we're still on this Nobel thing this much later, and it was a foolish decision not to, like, it's like, who gives a shit? It's like, nobody, like, who in the world in America is going to benefit from the guy getting that stupid piece of metal? Nobody. So what does it matter? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And also we have a 5 from Andrew Ball. He said, I really enjoyed this non-U.S. political approach. I enjoyed your pro-Western values, and now things have become so crazy.
And thank you so much for the support. And I'd have to say that things definitely have become crazy, that's for sure. Interestingly enough, around the same time that whole thing was going on with that island and that shopping list and everything, and then all this starts right afterwards. We went from peace, and there should be no more wars, to we're going to have as many wars as we can fit in the U.S. military budget, and we'll even increase the budget to do some more warring. So a little bit interesting with that one. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Catfish Sharp, who puts it at 5. And he said, I agree with you all on some, disagree about some, but the research on the channel is what it puts out is great, and that's why I watch.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Taoist Auditor. And Taoist Auditor said, currently, you get into politics to make money, and the idea of making a difference is long gone. And sadly, that is true, Taoist Auditor. I hate to say it, but it is true. It can be fixed, but we have to make some big changes to get that fixed right there. But as it stands right now, it's basically a big money-making operation. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's the Special Monetary Operation, the SMO. But beyond that, I gotta say, huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I'd agree with that as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Laser, who did not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Laser, for the support once again, and we appreciate that very, very much. And we also have a 5 from Andrew Honeycutt. He said the enforcers have established a good understanding of the U.S. Constitution, and this is extremely important.
And thank you so much for the support and giving us a little bit of appreciation there on understanding the U.S. Constitution. So big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that us addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Mr. Rick. And he said, politicians have divided us with sports team politics, and they are all getting rich and laughing at us while we fight each other.
I'd generally say so. And I have a feeling that sports, I'm going to be straight up, folks. I feel like sports is like brain rot for the masses because It just
Oh,
completely,
no.
like, I'm just going to be straight up, folks. This is my hot take
Oh,
of the
no.
night. Sports, like mass sports, is basically like brain rot for the masses because it completely distracts people from things that we should be focusing on and gets people involved in some people booting a ball around some field. And it's like I never have been able to get into sports, so that's why I can have a hot take like that. Probably is because I've just never been attached to anything like that. And then it basically gets people in this like tribal mindset where you don't even need to have one at that level, to where it's, you know, us versus them, even inside of the country. Like in Alabama, it was insane. Like people would go around poisoning like historic trees and stuff to get at the other people and get even with them. And growing up in that, I'm like, this is just ridiculous. Like grown adults are poisoning like 200-year-old trees because the University of Alabama or Auburn or whoever considered them to be important, and they lost the Iron Bowl or something to them, so they're going to go poison a tree. I'm like, this is really kind of dumb. That's just my take, though. You know, that's just me. You know, if you enjoy sports, you enjoy them. Me personally, I just never got them. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Taoist Auditor, who puts in a 5. They said, I was reading an article about life in Greenland. It's so harsh, you couldn't even get preppers from Alaska to get in there.
Man, that's crazy, honestly. But a big thanks to you for the support and sharing that with us. Very interesting to hear. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Taoist Auditor once again, who puts in a 5. He said, looking at administration to back, it seemed like the three superpowers made a plan to divide the world into areas of influence.
Possibly, but I don't know why we would even make an agreement with the Russians and the Chinese, especially the Russians. And I also don't know why we would want to make an agreement with the Chinese. I would feel like we would want to put them at a disadvantage and never make an agreement with them, but it's possible. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we couldn't make this channel possible. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Taoist Auditor once again, who puts in a 5, and said, looking outside in, I suspect that there needs to be 2 more parties, center left and center right, and people need options.
I'll be entirely honest. I'm just not really a big fan of the political party system. I wish that we had actually kept with the original intention of George Washington. Not all the founding fathers thought like him. A lot of people think that that's the case. But George Washington heavily advocated against political parties, and I believe that that should be what's emphasized. I think that we should more so see that representatives and senators are voted on based on the specific needs of their constituents within that district and that district alone, and then they go to Washington and then they represent those interests and create compromises with other districts that are similar to them, but also break those alliances when they need to vote on some other topic. So that way the decisions that are made for this country are a lot more custom tailored to what the citizenry actually need, instead of what a political party is saying what they want. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have 2 from Krillin, who said, heb, heb, heb.
but big thanks to you for the support, helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from SC Dear Girl once again, who said, saw, let's see, what does this mean? What does this mean? Let me pull this up real quick. I gotta see here. This sounds like a nickname for something. I gotta make sure it's safe. I gotta make sure it's streamer safe. Let's see here. Let's see here. Saw Coasties in Bagram. That's Coast Guard. Coast Guard students, or Coast Guard or something, working postal customs.
Huh. That's interesting, actually. I thank you so much for supporting and sharing that with us. And that was the last place I would expect the Coast Guard to be, would be at Bagram Air Base. And so with that, a big thanks to you for support and sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I don't know, like occasionally, also by the way, I get signed up for like city notifications and stuff like that. Someone keeps typing on here. I don't know if they're just doing this to be funny or something. I saw on the little thing for the area and stuff like that saying, did anybody hear a gunshot? Did anybody just hear that? It's like, I think somebody else is on edge. I'm like, I didn't hear nothing. It's like, I don't know what they're talking about. It's like, oh, don't be putting stuff like that out. Jeez.
Bro, they're walking around right now outside, man, like Patrick with the radio going, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo, man. It's like, calm down, buddy. Calm down, man.
They got me taking off my headphones and like putting my ear up to the window trying to hear if I hear something outside. I don't hear anything.
Man, honestly, man. Honestly. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plazath, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazath, for that support as well. And Antonio put in a 2 as well. Antonio Romero. He said, stay safe, guys. I'm wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much for the support, and we are trying our best to stay safe, and we are doing it all to our best, the best we can. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that us addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, we have a 2 from Talos Auditor once again. He said, your answer is good, but we are beyond that.
Troubling times indeed. I'd have to say, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jesse Garcia, who put in a 2 and said, if we're headed for World War III, 50% is none. Golden Dome.
Like the Golden Dome, though, is going to take like 10 years to put into service, so you don't have to pay that whole thing off in 1 year. You could spend like 10 years putting, say, let's see here, what in the world would be 10% of $500 billion? That would be about $50 billion a year into it over the next 10 years, and then you pay off the whole system that way. So you don't have to put $500 billion in and a 50% increase in 1 year to pay for the Iron Dome. The U.S. government doesn't pay for stuff generally in cash. Usually we pay for it on payment plans, like everyone else does for Big Macs and stuff these days. So I hope that has addressed it the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Alexander Vickers, and he said, scary OG patch and marmot patch. Perfect.
That's an interesting idea right there. We'll look into that, and we'll see about having that done. But a humongous thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And with that, folks, that is our last super chat to cover. So a huge shout out to you all once again for the support tonight. And we do sincerely appreciate it very, very much. And we are now going to get some live chat questions that we have been waiting for all night to get some of these juicy live chat questions. But first, we have the Morse code decoders. We have Paul Schultz, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush Cooperterix, Sire, and Brian. They said that Morse says, honestly, it actually shows what Russia is about. The fact that they sat there and did nothing. LT LSA.
And ding, and that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code for the night. I get to congratulate y'all greatly in the SYrian Civil War for getting that correct time and time again, because y'all are always getting that correct, and it's truly amazing and profound to see that the SYrian Civil War always tells the world what the Morse code message is. And so a huge congrats to y'all once again. And with that in mind, folks, we have gone overtime by 22 minutes. And so for that reason, we'll be getting 3 live chat questions, and then we'll be rounding out the stream for the night. So we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to none other than Ed, who said, was anything found on the seized Russian tanker?
Not that we know of right now. There might be something that might be found on it, but they haven't really been able to inspect the ship well enough and disclose that information to the public yet for us to know. So with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to JS, who said, do you think that there's an underlying instigator of both the Iranian and Syrian situation simultaneously?
I don't think so. Jelani is just a bastard, so that will propel a war to get going in Syria. And then in Iran, it's really the economic crisis that's developed in the country. On top of that, the preparations to go to war again against Israel and the United States, which really didn't turn out that well last time. So that seems to be the reasons why we're seeing those kick off, but it doesn't really appear that there's some sort of an underlying actor that's getting these kicked off in that region. So I hope that does address that the best we can once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is like the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one is going to go to AF Kaplan, who said, I don't think Russia will touch our bus. Or I think boats, but more likely they will try cyber and hybrid warfare against the U.S. instead. And what do you think?
That's highly likely. That's almost a guaranteed certainty, actually. So you're pretty much dead on the money with that, in my opinion. And so I would have to say, very good assessment right there, really. That's a great way to round out the stream. Excellent assessment. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the end of this stream. It's the final segment, folks, the last stretch. We thank you all massively for watching this show tonight. It's been an absolute honor and a great pleasure to be able to cover this news for 150,000 people tonight. We had a peak viewership of 18.3 thousand people, and we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative once again to see so many people enjoying the Enforcer show. And so, a huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if my great friends, there is enough news for a short war video, which I'm sure there probably will be, Enforcer Matt will be the one
Oh,
making
yeah.
that short war news video. He won the lottery, everyone. We actually alternated day to day. I'm sure many of y'all know that. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to round this thing out. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow, most likely on a short war video, as there's crazy news breaking out every single day, so I'd be surprised if we didn't have one tomorrow. And also, we will see you all definitely on the live stream tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and we hope you all join us then as well for another night of the news. And once again, we appreciate everybody for joining us once again tonight. Now, I was trying to check and see here. We had over 150,000 people here by the end of the stream. These streams have been whoppers recently, and we're glad that you're all choosing us as your news source. And we hope that we're delivering every single night, by the way. So a huge shout out to everybody for joining us. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.